In modern-day Egypt, Professor Daniel Jackson teams up with retired Army Colonel Jack O'Neill to unlock the code of an interstellar gateway to an ancient Egypt-like world. They arrive on a planet ruled by the despotic Ra, who holds the key to the Earth traveler's safe return. Now, in order to escape from their intergalactic purgatory, Jackson and O'Neill must convince the planet's people that Ra must be overthrown. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode, we'll be covering 1994 Stargate, directed by Roland Emmerich. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Midnight Double Feature. Coming at you tonight with the episode 1994 Stargate. We're excited to have you guys here. Thanks for checking us out. This is your first time listening. There is an E on this motherfucker for a reason. We are going to spoil this movie from 1994, so just a little bit of heads up. But thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, if it's your first time or if you're a repeat listener, thank you for hanging around. Tonight, it's not going to be just me. Again, no Matt, no Zoheb, no Danny. We're kind of doing a sequel to our Contact episode because, again, tonight with me is my good friend Matt Prater. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
How's it going, man? Glad to be back.
Hell yeah. Long time no see. No, just kidding. This is just, we were talking about Contact was, the first thing that kind of jumped into the mind to do. And then I was like, man, that's a lot of fun, but we should definitely do it again. Like, I know it was your first time being on a podcast, but you also are like, man, once you do it, you're like, when can I do that again? Like, it's like, it's a little addictive at first.
Totally.
So I was like, Stargate would be a perfect follow-up to this. I've actually never seen this before. You've recommended it several times, but I mean, like I said, if you listen to our Contact episode, Matt and I in a band jamming, renting out a storage unit, and that was like 2012 or 13, like that was a long time ago. So I'm just now getting around to checking it out. But just on the strength alone of like what I knew it was about and how much you enjoyed it, I was like, this is a perfect follow-up Contact. I don't think we could have gotten a more perfect episode for us to cover. But guys, that being said, before we jump into the episode proper, if you want to check us out on our socials, you can find us at Instagram at Midnight Double Feature, or you can find us on Facebook at the same thing. There's also the after party that's attached to that. Everybody's invited. You can also check us out on Twitter at MDF Pod. Shoot us an email, midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com, or you can always go to our website, midnightdoublefeature.com. That's where you can get your merch. You can read written reviews. We also have our Patreon link on there. It's patreon.com/midnightdoublefeature. That's $5 a month for access to the green room. We've been building that back catalog a lot lately. Danny and I have been banging out some episodes. We got some, episodes about, movies that we walked out on in theaters and stuff like that. Like we have some interesting little tidbits of discussion to have there. That it's not just talking about sitting down and talking about one specific movie. So those are fun. They're a little bit off the beaten path, but that being said, guys, also please stop by, rate and review us on iTunes. That helps us out so much. It's 100% free. It doesn't cost anything to do, and it helps really, really grow the show. We've been just steadily kind of seeing those build up more and more, and that's always really nice to see. But even if you enjoy the show and you haven't reviewed it yet, please stop by and review it. Or if you have, take a stranger's phone, run with it, and get the review in before the cops tackle you, and then you'll be fine. It'll still count. But again, jumping back into the movie proper, like I said, jumping into Stargate, Matt, this was definitely something where, like I said, you've recommended this a lot of times. I've always meant to check it out, but I've just never really gotten around to it. So we'll let you start with what are your opening impressions of this, and kind of when did you first see it? You know the drill.
Oh yeah. First of all, this is one of my favorite science fiction movies of all time. I love this movie. I first saw this. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, maybe, because this movie came out in 1994. And I used to watch this a lot with my mom. And there's a scene in the movie where kind of the main elder, and you'll see later on in the movie, but he has a candy bar, and we used to have this little inside joke between me and my mom about it. But anyway, yeah, I think for me, it's, I haven't seen it in a while, actually. And going back and watching it, I think it's a little dated, but I do think it holds up very, very well still. I really like the CGI. The special effects,
Yeah.
I think they did a good job with that. And I was just really excited too because I love ancient Egyptian culture and like watching any kind of documentary about ancient Egypt. I love that so much. So this movie was kind of ahead of its time, I think, for some of the themes that it has going on in it for 1994. So for example, there was a documentary made with Charlton Heston about the origins of the Sphinx in ancient Egypt. So next to the Great Pyramids of Giza, there's the Sphinx statue. And in the documentary, the claim is made that the Sphinx structure, that monument, is a lot older than what Egyptologists project it to be. And so that was actually, it came out in 1993, so about a year before this movie was released. So I think it was a really popular theme during this time with respect to ancient Egyptian cultures and all these new ideas about, possible like alien origins of, what built the pyramids. I don't really believe that. I suppose it's a possibility, but it was really, really popular during this time. So looking back, because I was a kid when this came out, so I wasn't really aware of all that. But now I have a little bit more, education and knowledge into like ancient Egyptian culture. So seeing this movie come out when it did, I think it was released at a really good time, and I think it. Like I said, I think it holds up really, really well. So, what did you think about it upon first viewing?
Yeah, this movie had not. I've definitely heard about like the legend, around Stargate, and obviously there were the successful TV shows as well. I've never watched any of the television shows. I've never watched any Stargate. No, nothing coming in this. Virgin, Stargate virgin all the way, and I like it. I think I don't quite love it. Last night when I was watching it, there was a part where I was like, I think I might hate this movie. And I kind of sat there for a minute and contemplated. I'm like, no, I don't think I hate it. I think that it is such a cool premise and it's such a cool concept that it does get squandered in some just like, it's a high concept movie to me that gets kind of squandered by like, and he'll beat up a bad guy here and they send the bomb back up. And it's like, just story wise, there's some really kind of cliched stuff, and it's 1994, and at the time these things were, I guess I can't really say because I wasn't, teetotaling aware of all of this stuff at the time, but I don't know if that was exactly a cliche then, but it definitely is a cliche now. And there's just this kind of like, there's a lot of cliches and there's a lot of like archetypes and stuff, he's the grizzled military guy and he's the eccentric, quirky dude who gets away with being kind of rude because he's eccentric, and things that eventually just became, kind of cliche, kind of just redundant and done to death. And that doesn't take away from the guy who plays Ra is fucking awesome. I love that. I love that guy. And I was like, holy shit, what a good performance. Even just the physicality alone, like doesn't even have to do much to just actually command like presence. Really, really cool. Like you said, the special effects, a little dated at parts, but for the most part, actually held up, especially the Stargate itself. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. There's some parts that are a little meh, but it holds up for the most part. But I think that, I'm 50-50. The concept, I love James Spader. James Spader is one of the greatest actors fucking ever born. I love James Spader. But, it ends up being a thing of like, if this movie were a little less kind of like, I don't know, if it leaned into like Contact, between this and Contact, yeah, fucking Contact's a way better movie, in my opinion. But I think that this movie has a chance to be kind of like that, but it gets caught up in just this, I don't know, it gets caught up in some tropey kind of shit, where he's like I said, he's the nerdy guy and he has nothing left to lose, and he's the military guy and, he's coming back from this thing, with the son dying. So I didn't absolutely hate it, but there are parts of this movie that make 100% no sense. 100%. There were multiple times I was like, man, that does not make any fucking sense to me. And granted, we were talking about this off air too. One of the problems with this movie, it's free on YouTube right now. Like you and I both said, it was on Hulu. I went to watch it and it was gone. But it's impossible at this time. I looked on Vudu, iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, like all of the shit to try to rent this movie, and I could not fucking rent it anywhere. And you were, hey, it's free on YouTube, so what does it matter? Well, on YouTube, like the free versions and stuff, don't have subtitles when they're speaking this alien language. So you're sitting there watching it at certain points and you're like, okay, listen, I understand language is a big part of this movie. And I get that like it's supposed to be kind of like, you know, you should feel kind of like, what are they saying? You know, and I love the way at first that movie makes you feel like that. And then they brought in the subtitles as the conversation was going. But I had to look that shit up. You know, I had to like look up the transcript from the movie and read, you know, what exactly the hell was going on. But all in all, you know, I would say I'm really kind of 50-50. I would honestly say like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I'm split right down the middle that like, I don't love it. It has the potential to be a really, really, really good movie. Like extremely good. It feels like The Mummy meets Fifth Element. And I love both of those movies. And I'm so close to really, really liking this movie. But I think just a couple of spots, it just falls a little short for me. You know, I didn't hate it. You know, I wasn't just like, oh my God. You know, and I probably will watch it again just because I've only really watched it the one time. And even James Spader, he was like, listen, you know, there's nothing. Yeah, I fucking love James Spader. Listen, there's nothing wrong with, you know, just the way that motherfucker talks. But he was basically saying he did the movie for money. And he was like, you know, there was a quote where he was like, listen, I knew it wasn't a great script, but there's nothing wrong with doing a project to make fucking money. And he was like, and I wasn't like a huge, you know, star at this point. You know, it's not like he was just blowing everybody out of the water. Yeah, I know he was in some awesome, even back in the 80s and a lot of awesome shit. But he's like, but at some point, you know, he said something. It was a really great quote. Where he's like, you have to kind of leverage working, like it is a job. He's like, you do have to leverage like the working part of it with the artistic part of it, and sometimes do stuff that you wouldn't 100% jump for. And it was actually a really cool like way to look at it. But I really, like I said, I'm so close to really enjoying this movie, but it just falls just a hair short for me. I think this is a perfect movie to be remade. 100% needs to be a remake. I think that if you redid this and you had like fucking Denis Villeneuve or, you know, somebody of that caliber to do that, I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, I think you have a good assessment of it. I mean, there are parts of this movie that feel almost like a made for TV movie. Does that make sense? Just with the feel of it. And that's not necessarily the cinematography or anything. I don't know what it is, but there's some parts of it that do feel a little bit kind of like a TV movie instead of like a full, you know, Hollywood film production. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was casted really well. I love James Spader and Kurt Russell, and like you said, let's see, what was his name? Jay Davidson, the guy that played Raw. Man, like that guy looked the part. Oh my gosh, so good. And let's see, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's something about this movie for me. You know, I watched it as a kid, so. And like I said, I haven't seen it in a while until I watched it recently. And I did find a big part of me wanting to like it more than I actually did. And like you were saying, it's very cliche. I agree. Watching it now, it's a little bit disappointing, but I still have that optimism and fun that I still remember that as a kid. So, you know, I'm able to still, you know, enjoy it. And like I said, I love the whole ancient Egyptian theme of the movie. But what's really interesting about this movie to me is there was a book written in the 70s, I think, or at least a documentary of the book came out called Chariots of the Gods. And that book so that book is built on the premise that basically all the religious ideas from humanity and even our technologies were a result for like an intelligent alien species coming down and you know, influencing us. And in that documentary, they show an isolated tribe they've never had any contact with any other humans. And the military actually used the area where they lived as sort of a mini airport for a while. And then they left. And when they came back, the people that lived there, they built like planes out of like straw and hay as a way to sort of entice them to come back because they thought they were gods. I mean, they saw these military men, like, how do they feed themselves? They don't even have to hunt. Right. So it basically, the book is Ancient Aliens. The whole idea of the book and the documentary is the same exact flow of Ancient Aliens before that show on the History Channel came out. And so I think this movie really took a lot of that idea and formulated like, the Stargate and the Egyptian culture of like Ra, the sun god, was actually like an alien that was, dying, and he was searching the galaxy for eternal life, and he found like a primitive species, and he, found like the boy, Jay Davidson's character, and, kind of got like possessed him like a parasite. And then he made the Stargate to go to another planet on the other side of the galaxy, to, just to continue his life. And so I think that was really cool. And like I said, like I'm just a sucker for ancient Egyptian culture. Like I said, I don't believe in the whole like aliens came here, and maybe, but that's not like what I would say is like the for sure thing. But yeah. I think another thing about this movie that I really like is it's such a good setup for practice for the movie Independence Day. I see so much about this movie that reminds me of Independence Day, knowing that it's the same director. And just the whole, even the government's involved, it's aliens. So I think they really nailed who they got to direct Independence Day from this movie. So I think watching this and then going back and watching Independence Day is really cool to see how that director got experience with these sort of themes and like, the aliens and the government and all that stuff, to kind of get prepared for Independence Day. Because it was, Independence Day was such a big movie. And in fact, I remember really wanting to see that movie in the theater. And the one time we went to the movie theater to see it, we were in line ready to get our tickets. And my half brother and half sister kind of showed up, and we were like, oh, hey. And they were there to see the showing of Jack with Robin Williams. It was like it was like a pre-release, and so we ended up going to see that. So I didn't get to see Independence Day. I was pretty bummed. So but another thing about this movie that I really, really, really love is the score. The music is incredible. It's one of my favorite parts. In fact, the film score composer, his name's David Arnold. He did a lot of the James Bond films. But one thing that's really interesting is he's made a couple appearances on Little Britain, of all things, which I thought was really neat. There's a little thing in there. The comedy show. Yeah. Which I thought was really interesting. I was like, oh man, it's kind of a little hidden gem. But yeah, the film score of this movie is something that I really, really love.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, dude, I don't normally catch a lot of film scores, and Zoheb is usually one. He's usually the one to stop and be like, oh yeah, this film. But this is one of the few times I was watching the movie and listening, and it just had this really like the fucking desert and just this like really regal kind of, it felt like The Mummy. It felt like this swashbuckling kind of adventure across the sands of time and place and all this stuff. Like it definitely, the score definitely gives you the feeling. It definitely accomplished what it was trying to do. But I mean, with our opening thoughts out of the way, you want to jump into this shit?
Let's do it.
Hell yeah, dude. So, starting right off the bat, these credits were actually pretty cool, because I felt like it was like Batman 89, when they're like going around the fucking not bat signal, the bat logo the whole time. And again, this feels so much like The Mummy. We open up in 1928 in Egypt, and they find the first like Stargate and stuff. Just the feeling of the excitement of just this thing being on Earth is awesome. You do get right away the kind of, it's the same thing of getting the code and contact. It's like, oh shit, like that somebody of intelligence definitely left this here. It's really, really exciting. Like right off the bat, you get the kind of, you see all these different people walking around in just this giant ring, like standing above everybody. Like just the ominous feeling of that is like, it's so mind blowing, but at the same time, it's kind of terrifying. You're like, I don't know about this shit. Like that's a little bit, that doesn't look like, Egyptians just carved that and left that out here. That looks a little like Lovecraftian. That's a little weird. But moving on, it's present day. This is where we're introduced to Daniel Jackson, played by James Spader. He's the kooky, eccentric guy who, he reminds me of like the guys in the crew with Ellie Arroway in Contact, Like he feels like he would be one of those like kooky, the guy is fishing in like a kiddie pool with plastic fish.
Yes.
It's like, okay, dude, like get out of here. And what's so funny to me is that it's like, did they just bring him out here to be like, tell us all your crazy shit so we can laugh at you? And he's like, what is is he just kind of like disproving all this stuff here? What exactly is going on?
Yeah, it seems he's an academic of sorts. He's doing a presentation about. Actually, like in the presentation, he says something about the Sphinx is actually shown to be older. He's challenging the origins of the fourth dynasty of Egypt, right? Like they didn't build the pyramids. In other words, the pyramids are much older. And, somebody in the audience makes they're not taking him seriously. Like, what are you trying to say? It's Martians, And I think it's a good way to set up for what the film is about. So I think that honestly, it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And I love the fact that it's raining when he comes out and he's, getting his proposal or whatever by the lady, because it was her dad that found the Stargate. So she's been in the Egyptian world, her whole life. So I'm assuming, she's here listening at this guy.
This is weird. Right.
So she's listening kind of at his presentation because I think she thinks he's kind of a genius, like he's on to something, because he's in language. He understands like, I guess, what's the word? Oh my gosh, I can't say it. Anyway, like, the text from Egyptians, like hieroglyphics, calligraphy.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. Calligraphy? I don't know.
Yeah, it's such a hard word to say. So I think it's a good setup for the whole theme of the movie, being in Egypt culture.
Well, what cracks me up is the fact that like he's coming out and they don't say who they are. They're just like, oh, we have a proposal for you. And it's like just this fucking lady in the back of a car. It looks like it's like a Goodfellas whacking. Like it looks like they're just going to shoot him in the back of the head. But there's so much in this movie. There's too many times where I'm like, there's no way in hell. Like when they're giving them something to drink when they get to the planet. And I was like, fuck no, I wouldn't drink that shit. You have no idea what that's going to do to you. It's like, there's a lot of like trust in this movie that I just kind of laugh at. And that's just my cynical ass. But they give background right here though. They're just like, you basically have nothing. You're being evicted from your apartment. It really shows also like the scale of their knowledge, basically that they know all the shit about this guy, which is really cool. And there's one thing I've got to give the movie credit for, because we're moving on to Kurt Russell here, is that it's maybe 10 minutes in and we have like the intrigue to, okay, so what's going on with these hieroglyphs? What's going on? And then, we have our two main characters and we kind of see where they're at with their lives when they're both kind of, one's being laughed at by his peers and, people are, thinking he's crazy. He's about to get evicted from his apartment. And then at the same time, you have, Kurt Russell, who's on the other end of the spectrum, who was like, had a family and he had all of this stuff, and then now it's been taken away, and obviously there's like a kind of a wedge between him and his wife, and obviously they're going through a lot of shit, and it really shows you how long he's been out of the military and stuff when you see the length of his hair and what it actually looks like when he's like I guess in command, and his what fucked me up too is that haircut. When he goes to a crew cut, I was like, oh, this is that movie Soldier. And I was like, oh, fuck, no, that's not the same. And I seriously thought these were the same movies. Like, I really did for like half a second. I was like, oh, this is the one that's kind of like set in the Blade Runner universe. Like, because apparently that movie Soldier is like pseudo set in like a Blade Runner universe. There's like one of those, the spinners, the car that you see. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was sitting there talking to Lindsay. And I was like, yeah, I think Stargate's got something to do with Blade Runner. And she's like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, fucking idiot. I had no idea what I was talking about. But, we get this backstory here. Their son has died. He was playing with a gun. What kind of made me laugh, though, is when they're sitting there and it's obvious he's in his son's room. He's holding a gun. I mean, Kurt Russell sells the shit out of this. And then the guy's like, so what happened? And it's like, really, dude? You have to have that spelled out for you. Like, it just kind of made me laugh because it's like, obviously, like the kid died. But even just the added thing of like, that it was one of Jack's guns that this kid probably got a hold of. I think that's got to sting twice as much as to feel that you're, probably responsible for that. I guess, what was he just like playing with a gun and it went off or something like that? I can't remember exactly what they say. but you got to know. Yeah.
I don't think that they actually specified, but I think this is kind of where you were saying how this movie has some cliches. It may be in the pacing of this movie, and some of the exposition, it's very fast paced.
Yeah.
How they're cutting, even like his relationship when he meets the Cherie girl later on in the film, it's very 90s, I think, with how it's cut and how it's edited, but it moves very fast. And it's almost as if it's hard for you to take the character development as serious. I think they do a good job. It definitely holds up. But I do think that if they would have maybe given a little bit more context or backstory or depth to these characters, where they come from, they like I said, I think they do a good job, but it's a little fast pace. For me, that's what I kind of found cliche about it. No,
and I think that those cliches help you round that corner faster than if we had taken time to ignore cliche. I mean, cliches are cliches for a reason because they work. Actually, Matt Murphy from the Wombat said that. He was like, I know that stuff's a cliche, but if it's a cliche, that means it's got some truth to it. It's like, yeah, I definitely see that, and I think you also have to think of the time. Had this become a cliche yet? And I maybe, I'm not 100% sure. Like, if it wasn't then, it for sure shit is now. But they're it's kind of like the expressway for getting these characters. Like we need to look at them and just know who they are. And you know who these two guys are when you take a look at them. I was like, yeah, I mean, they cast this movie so well that there's not really any kind of question of like, yeah, there's more to them that meets the eye. They are cliches, but then when you kind of start getting down to it, there's a lot more. I don't want to say a lot more, but they're not just like these two-dimensional stereotypes. There is a pinch more of like character development in there that I like. More so with Ed O'Neill. I'm sorry, Ed O'Neill. That's the guy from Married with Children. More so with Jack O'Neill than you get with Daniel. But there is something there that I kind of. I like, especially in Kurt Russell's character, but yeah, again, just seeing him with that long hair kind of fucked me up. And I was like, damn, dude, he has been gone for a while. If his hair is that long, like, that's kind of crazy. And now his son is like the new Captain America and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Wyatt Russell. That's his son. And we just did Overlord, and he was in that. And he was fucking great. I was like, dude, Wyatt Russell's a better actor than Kurt Russell any day. I'm sorry. Like, dude, he fucking smoked it. He did such a great job. But, this is where we're introduced to the rest of the team. I love the guy here. I think that's Richard Kind. It's fucking hilarious, dude. He's in Spin City. He pops up in like a bunch of stuff. He's a big face and like Curb Your Enthusiasm and stuff like that. But this is where we basically, we kind of start looking at exactly why we're here and exactly why he's here, because he just eats this shit apart. And he's like, who the fuck has been doing this? He just comes in and he takes all these bitches to school, and just immediately there's, it's almost like, okay, you just decoded that whole thing. And like, but at the same time, it's one of those things where it's borderline not believable, but I can let it go. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like this, it doesn't, not everything has to be ultra realistic. Like him sitting around a table for 8 months, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, trying to figure this fucking thing out. But it's a good character. I'm like, plot wise, I don't love it. It's lazy, but it's a good character moment where I think he, and again, he writes it with Stargate. Like the first time he wrote that, I was like, ooh, I was like, that's fucking cool. It immediately had my attention. And they say, yeah, what's the government 1 in 5,000-year-old tablets? My reports say 10,000. Well, this is what cracks me up. Is he's like, yeah, my reports say 10,000. And then he's like, I don't give information out unless it's, and it's like, well, why the fuck would you tell him how old they are if the information's classified? Like, I know it's such a nitpick, but I'm like, I would not want somebody knowing, more shit than they need to know if this is fucking classified. But they these are just the cover stones. Was there a tomb beneath? No, but we found something a lot more interesting. It's like, oh, I love that. Just the mystery right before we see this shit. This is the moment before the dinosaurs come out in Jurassic Park. This is the moment when Ellie drops in the machine, or John Hurt's like, you want to go for a ride? It's like, this is that moment. And this is one of the points that Lindsay and I loved the first half of this movie. Lindsay and I were hooked. Thought I just was so, even the woman who recruits him and stuff, everybody has an interesting even though they might not get a whole lot of screen time, not everybody like blends into the background. They stick out just a little bit. But he, so basically he's like, hey, I'm here in case you succeed. Like, that's fucking scary, man. Like that is some ominous shit. But I love the fact that she just kind of accepts it. She's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, if something does happen, I guess, you don't want these eggheads here. I want a guy with a fucking AK. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm just kidding. But what did you think about this when they first kind of like start discovering the stones? And we can kind of, we don't have to take this exactly scene by scene, because this is where he, figures out exactly what they are, and he calls the meeting the next day and stuff. So like, what did you think about, these kind of like first moments of seeing all this stuff?
Well, I'm like you and Lindsay. I love the first part of this movie. I think I like it better than the second part. Just the build up and the vibe and the feeling of like when they're in this military base deciphering everything. In fact, so this scene here where he's going to fill up the coffee pot, it just takes me right to a scene in Independence Day with Jeff Goldblum. I think he's actually drinking whiskey or something. It's just got the same kind of feel to it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
It does.
You know what I'm saying?
Drunk,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, just kind of has the same kind of feel. So like basically for me, the reason why I like the first part of this movie is because it's very like academic and scientific.
Yes.
And it's giving you a lot of context about what's going to happen. And I love the lighting. How they have everything set up here, which is something that I really like. And I also like how they incorporate star constellations, which has always been with the Orion constellation and the pyramids. Sort of the theory is they're lined up on the ground to match the lining of the stars.
That's super. That's super crazy. I've heard that before, and like they perfectly lined out. And I was like, come on, man. I was like, I mean, there's coincidences, and then there's like, oh fuck. I mean, that's definitely done on purpose. Like, for what reason? Who knows? But still, that's amazing that they got those like synced up like that.
Right, and I really like how this movie, does have a lot to do with language, kind of like, it's not to the extent that, Arrival is, but going back to something you said too, like I think when this movie came out in the mindset of a 1994 person, this probably was a lot more profound. And it had a lot more of an entertainment like impact than maybe you watch it now and you're like, I want to like it, but it's a little cliche, it's a little cheesy. I love how he sneezes. He's like a nerd, and he's like constantly sneezing. Right. I think that's really funny.
Well, also what you're talking about with Jeff Goldblum, and that's the scene. He's drunk out of his mind, and his dad is like, "Come on, David, you'll catch a cold," and he's like, "Oh, a cold." That's it, and this is literally what happened. James Spader sees the Orion thing on the newspaper and takes it, and it's like his aha moment. Dude, if I had $1 for every time there was an aha moment in this movie, there are so many of them. Like, there's so many, like, take a look at something and tilt your head and go, oh, that's it. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And like, it's okay.
Oh, you're right.
It's okay a couple of times. Maybe once, maybe twice you can get away with that. But even now, I don't know. I think that's become such a cliche, too, where, like, somebody gets bumped on the head and they get thrown upside down and they see something and they go, that's it, and they figure it out, right at the last moment. But, basically, like you said, he figures out these aren't symbols. These are actually the constellations. I love always looking for Orion. It's like a weird comfort, when there's no clouds out. It's like, hey, there you are, buddy. Like, that's always been my favorite one as a kid, just because I like the belt, the kind of warrior thing. I was like, that's really fucking cool. But he puts on this presentation. We meet more of these like, business, military, mustache. They're just these very mustachioed kind of guys. But he breaks it down. They're like, you figured out what in 12 days what these people have been working on in 2 years. It's like, yeah, that's almost unbelievable. It kind of made me laugh. I was like, yeah, that's kind of not possible. But he says there's got to be, 6 points. You got to have 6 points for this, space. And you've also got to have the return point or the point of origin. And I was like, okay, cool. I love that. That's awesome. Like, again, like what you said, the academia sign or the academia parts of it are what are interesting to me, because and I wonder if it's because it's the same thing kind of with Contact. Is I love just that we talked about that in Contact, the chugga, just that feeling of like we're building up to something. But is it because the end hasn't been defined. I think also sometimes when it comes down and it's anything, it's like, oh, well, now it can't be everything. It's like now we've narrowed it down to what it is. Like the possibilities when you see exactly what's behind the curtain are just narrowed down. And I'm like, it's cool, but I love when you're chasing your tail, like Man from Earth. We talked about that the other day. Just these people chasing their tails around. I love that excitement in the scientific community. But just where he basically lays everything down. I love, he's like, hey, this is what you need to do. Here are the symbols. And they're like, all right, let's go do it. It's like, what? Like, again, it kind of makes me laugh my ass off, because it's like just the fact that they just are like, yeah, let's fucking go. Let's do it. Like there's nobody going, we don't know what this will do. There's like no, I know without it, there's no movie, so I'm not complaining that hard, but there's no pushback. Nobody is like, General, you can't be, you figured there would be something like that. I know I for sure would at least pop up like, what are the pros and cons at least, but I mean, what, like, is that something that stuck out to you at all? Or were you just like, no, am I just being a picky asshole?
No, absolutely. And again, I think that just goes back to like how this movie's paced. It's so fast paced. There's not quite enough context or like realism. And like you just said, like, well, what are the pros and cons of this? Why are we doing this? How did the government, get this Stargate in an underground bunker? Mm-hmm. And, so yeah, I mean, I think you're right there. And I agree. Like it's something that I think is easily overlooked if you were, watching this in like a 1994 mindset, if you could go back and watch it, right. It seems like it's more believable.
Yeah. And honestly, I would trade, I mean, because we're 20 minutes in at this point. She just said, oh, it's your Stargate, and they show them what the Stargate is. Like, okay, cool. And then they go through the Stargate probably about a half-hour mark. And it's like, you know what? I would take 15 more minutes of prep than I would for 15 minutes of like the gunfights and, the battle cruisers and stuff. It's like, it's not that there's a lot of that. It's just that I like this more than the action-y kind of stuff. But again, just that moment of excitement. It's your Stargate. It's like, oh, that's fucking awesome. That's so. But and even I, who don't know a lot about Stargate, and I don't know much about the television show or any of that stuff. I'm trying to think of the right word. Just how iconic the Stargate is. The steps leading up to the circles. It's like even I know what that is. And I've never watched an episode. I've just seen commercials and stuff for it. But it's just like image wise, it's an amazing image of just these steps leading up to a circle. It's like what could possibly be on the other side of the door. He identifies the seventh symbol. And again, like you said, and it's just hilarious. He's like, he's found the seventh symbol. They're like, all right, go for it. Like, dude, what the fuck? That's crazy. I really do think as I'm watching this and kind of reviewing it, the beginning of this feels like Contact. I mean, it really does. I mean, alien device, they don't know what it does. It might be a transporter to somewhere. It's very, very, very Contact. But at the same time, the second half, it ends up turning into a Roland Emmerich movie, and like there's these, phasers set to kill and stuff like that. Which actually, I was reading, there's a guy who sued the shit out of them about this movie.
Oh, really?
His name is Omar Zuhdi, Zuhd, Zeddy. His name is Omar Zeddy, and he sued the shit out of it. He was like a high school teacher. And he says that he wrote, this is an article from 1996. A Shawnee high school teacher who claims he wrote the Egyptian-based time travel ideas were stolen to make one of the 1994's top-grossing movies. He won his fight to put the case before a jury. And they actually, from what I was reading, is they were going to go to trial, and they settled with him out of court. Which is not an admission of guilt. That's just, hey, I think they settled for $50,000. It's like, dude, that's a hell of a lot less than you're going to have to pay if he wins, But apparently this guy said that he wrote, he's a Latin and ancient history teacher. He was seeking damages of at least $140 million, which is insane. That's absolutely ludicrous. But he says that he wrote a script and turned it in, I think, to like Fox or something. Yeah, he submitted a manuscript to 20th Century Fox in 1984, and the studio rejected it. And he apparently has some colleagues from his school and stuff who have backed him up. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that, there's two sides to every story. I'm not saying that's exactly what it is, but I love reading about, stuff like that where, there's people like the guy Harlan Ellison is really the guy who kind of wrote Terminator, like it's very interesting how if you watch the first Terminator movie during the credits, it's like the producers was to acknowledge the creative works of Harlan Ellison, and he sued the shit out of them, and fucking got his name put in all of that shit. And that's interesting too. If you're ever interested in those, Harlan Ellison and the first Terminator movie are like, whoa, that's way too fucking close, together. But, like I said, he quirky dude takes the fucking permanent marker and is writing on the screen. It's like, I'd love if someone were like, hey, what the fuck, man? And he starts walking off in a daze, like, oh, it's just, and somebody grabs him. They're like, no, spray that shit and wipe it the fuck off. Like somebody rubbed his nose on it like he's a dog. I don't care how eccentric you are. Fuck you. Clean that shit up. My dad worked 40 years to get me that monitor. So you're a fucking asshole. But they end up, kicking off. They ignite the Stargate. Great. Dude, the special effects are top notch. This looks great. Right. The water.
They hold up so well.
It looks really, really, really good. And just the light, just the feeling of like the light around you is just so brilliant and intoxicating. Like you almost can't say no, but like, talk to me about this. Like, what'd you think of this shit?
Going back to what you said, you'd never even seen the movie, never saw the show, and you knew it's a Stargate.
Yeah.
And I found that incredibly amazing because, it's such a beautiful, like visually, like with the water and like just being able to go through it and be transported through like, just a whole nother part of the galaxy. And I really love the little machine and the arm that extends through it. I think that was really good. And it's like these little gadgets like that aren't CGI, that, some of the little imagery of like how they have this little thing going across like see-through glass, like where they're pinpointing where in the galaxy that it leads to. A lot of these just like blinking lights that, they're just like, what does that even mean? I like that stuff. Like I like old Hollywood abusing CGI, because of budget constraints. That's one of my favorite things about older movies. It's just like they really went all out with the set design. They put a lot of money in, just kind of the actually really making it. So I love the water of the Stargate. Like it's just so cool. I think it's one of the most just iconic things. You never even saw the movie yet you knew what it was. So I think that says a lot, especially coming from you, because movies, like pop culture, and I feel like most people would be able to identify, oh yeah, that's a Stargate even without seeing it. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the movie that it accomplished. It's just it got that ingrained in popular culture. What a star, it's a Stargate, even if you haven't seen the movie. I think that's just really incredible that got across.
Oh, hell yeah. But it's so, how many people have never seen Highlander, but say there can be only one, like, or is it, there can be only one, or I think there's been some contention about how I've always said that can be only one. But the interesting thing here is where they start going on about why they might have to abort it. They're like, they stick the arm in. Hey, there's oxygen. It's very comparable to our system, which is really cool. But they end up saying, without a reconnaissance mission, basically we can't, once on the other side, we'd have to decipher the markings on their gate and in essence dial home in order to bring the team back. And that's an obstacle. It's like, okay, cool. And then he's just like, yeah, I can do it. And it pissed me off when I saw this. Like, dude, of course you can, because we need you to be able to do that. A fucking course. But then once they get over there and he's actually kind of bullshitted him, I was like, ooh, that's kind of, you see this guy who's just so desperate to, he's not, quite like this obsessive foaming at the mouth, I'll kill everybody like Matt Damon in The Martian trying to finish this shit. But I love, that kind of comes back to bite him in the ass. But again, it's just one of those things where like, how did this end up, becoming a problem? Like, this is the government. I feel like they'd be like, okay, you will tell us exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it when you get on the other side. It doesn't feel like something they would just kind of like, all right, yeah, Bill over there says he's down. I say we go get out of here and split a sixer up at the parking lot. But the whole thing about, leading the team in, it's basically, it's down to I don't know if this guy's a general or what. But I like seeing this where she gives him the Eye of Ra. I found it at the Stargate when I was a child. It has brought me luck. I like this actress a lot, and I don't know who she is or if she's been in a lot more stuff, but I hate the fact that we don't see her at all again after he goes to the Stargate. And I was like, man, that kind of sucks. Like I like her character. There's this mystic kind of quality to her that I really enjoy. And a great comedic beat. Everybody, they look like the Colonial Marines from Aliens, and then there's fucking James Spader just in camo for some reason, just all in green sneezing. It just sticks out like a sore thumb. That is his little beats in juxtaposition of the team and stuff is actually really funny at times, just because he's the odd man out, I guess. But one thing I do love is one of the guys who's on the team is fucking French Stewart from like Third Rock from the Sun. Do you remember that show?
Oh yeah.
That somebody pointed out, they're like, what's funny is French Stewart is a American, just a human in this, going into a Stargate, and in Third Rock from the Sun, he's an alien who comes to Earth. And I was like, oh, fucking son of a bitch. That's interesting. I didn't think about it like that. But basically they go in with this, mountain full of shit. Yeah. And it kind of, again, it cracks me up that they just actually send like, you don't send a monkey in there with like a backpack on or something, just, I don't know, something about that kind of cracked me up. But once they come through, I love the way that James Spader comes through, and it's almost like you're in shock, like that seems so, he sells that, like the arrival of it. But what's interesting is how, kind of shook up he is, and immediately someone's like, hey dude, you're cool. Like, we're all here. It's like, just to try and like, imagine actually doing this. And this is the shit about these movies that I love, that I end up really kind of fucking losing my mind over, and just like, imagine you being one of the first people to travel across the galaxy, and you're on a planet that, so few humans may have ever stepped planet on, if at all, or, ever stepped face on at all. And it's like, holy shit, just the feeling of like, you don't know what could be outside. This whole planet could be just like an eyeball and some giant fucking monster. Like, you have no idea. It's so insane. Just the, I guess, like the possibilities of it all. And I'll be honest, I was a little let down, like when it was just like deserts and stuff like that. I was like, oh, so this is basically like Egypt, and Egypt copycatted. I think they said, what is the name of this planet? Do you know? It's like a Abydos, like a Bisos. What is? I'm gonna look it up real quick. Abydos. Yeah, Abydos. That's what I've Googled, and Google has told me. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, they lead the team through here. Kurt Russell is iconic as fuck with that beret on and those giant oh, yes. Desert glasses. It's like, yeah, it's fucking badass, dude. And they said that this whole building is actually the Temple of Giza, right? That I guess the one on Earth is a copycat of this one, or vice versa. I think they say later on it is. Yeah.
I think he basically in the story, he basically came to this planet to kind of, I guess, he has his like humans here that he can like reincarnate, because he outlawed reading and writing. Yeah. We find that out later on. Going back to French Stewart, in the movie, he has some of the best lines, like how he yells one of the guys' names, Kowalski. He just sounds so brutal and so serious when he's like screaming when they're like in battle and stuff. I really like his voice. He really like gave a good performance with that. Yeah, he just kind of fell off the face of the earth, like I don't know if he's still, I haven't seen him in anything, but he would pop up in random stuff, like he's in, an episode of That 70s Show. He's in an episode of Seinfeld. He pops up in like, he's in like Home Alone 3, I think. Just random stuff, but it's a face that you just cannot, just that squinty eyed, like, well, what's going on? It's like you really can't forget that guy's, for better or for worse, you really can't forget that guy's face. But the shot with them on the hill and the three moons, it's like, oh. Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, this is where it kind of gets a little, the second part, once they go through the Stargate, is when I get some of that feeling of like it's more of a TV movie instead of like a huge Hollywood production. But there is something about this movie that, captured me as a kid, that it really does take me away somewhere. it really accomplished that. Even still, I can still kind of get in that mindset and feel that. Although, going back, I agree with you. It is a little disappointing in some parts, but I still love this movie. It's just a lot of it is just nostalgia, and I think the puppet coming up, they have that like little like animal that they see. It's more like a puppet. I like the fact that it's not CGI, even though you can kind of tell, it's kind of got that Jim Henson type of vibe to it. I actually I don't know, something about, to me, CGI kind of gets overdone, especially like in the early 2000s, late 90s. It was just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth with the amount of over CGI that was being done. Oh, and I get it, because it's so expensive to, make, like, for example, in this movie, there's no telling how much it costs to make that. I don't know what the animal's called in the movie. I'm sure you can find out.
That weird ass thing that licks him. Apparently that's a horse, and they just threw some shit on it. And I was like, oh, nice. and I love it. It does kind of have this like Jim Henson puppeteering like kind of thing. It has this very like, I don't know how to, like the graboids from Tremors, it kind of has that big bubbly like kind of feel to it. But what's crazy is, once they kind of establish two things that happen, he's like, hey, I want you guys back through the gate in an hour. This is one thing that I found interesting is that, had everything gone according to plan and they'd have gone back through the gate, he still would have blown it up, even though there's been no signs of trouble. There's been no signs of anything hostile. And the way that I took that is when, O'Neill is like, hey, you guys go back through there, and they kind of shoot a look and they're like, really? He's like, yeah, no, this is just a simple like connection. We're not exploring or anything like that. And it seems like everybody's kind of put off by that. So like what's interesting is on a rewatch is I'm like, dude, once that guy has a nuke and he's trying to kill himself, and it's basically what he's, assigned himself to do. Is there, he's like, yeah, I was told to blow up the Stargate. Was there any trouble? Dude, there's been no fucking trouble at this point. You've been here for 10 minutes. Like, there's been no signs of anything hostile. Like, it is actually a great moment that I didn't catch the first time around of like, holy shit. Like, he was ready to just die just to, basically kind of fake that there was some kind of problem and just fucking blow himself up. And it's like, damn, that's a moment that I kind of wish James Spader's character would get. I kind of wish there was a little bit more, I kind of wish there was a little bit more character development in that way, because it just kind of feels like, what's his name? O'Neill. It kind of feels like O'Neill gets that, but Daniel really doesn't. He gets some pussy. He definitely gets some pussy, which is great. But he's not, he doesn't really have like an arc. There's not really anything for him to come back from, and I feel like James Spader kind of gets the top billing, but this feels a lot more like Kurt Russell's movie, in terms of like a character arc, and that's just my 2 cents. But it's a dark moment when you're like, fuck, he was just going to kill himself just to kill himself, without any kind of provocation is scary.
Yeah. Well, one thing that, I'm thinking about now is like, why are they here exactly? Like, what was the purpose in the government being involved to go through the Stargate and then, just, I guess, turn right back around? I mean, do you want to take small steps and just see what happens if you can go through the Stargate and come back successfully? Assuming it's, breaking you down atom by atom, will all those atoms be arranged back in the proper order? Once you're there, what's the mission? It's just to go right back, and like that, this is where, obviously we get the movie. They can't go right back. He can't figure out the seventh symbol. And, so for me, it's kind of like, I wish that there was a little bit more in the first part of the movie. Like, why are we going?
Right.
Exactly.
Have a clear objective.
Yeah. And I'm all down for like, hey, like American spirit, man, we're going to get in there and we're just going to go exploring, but I think that there could have been a little bit more like reason given, or like a direct mission other than just, okay, we're going to go through, I'm going to blow it up, because those his orders to blow it up so they couldn't ever go back through?
What he says, I'm pretty sure, is he's like, I was told that if there was any kind of hostility or any kind of trouble, I was supposed to blow this thing and, let you guys go through it. And which is, I'll get to the ending. That doesn't make any fucking sense, as he was supposed to stay behind with the bomb. We'll get to that. But he's basically saying like, yeah, I was supposed to send you guys through and blow it up. Well, if there was any signs of any kind of hostility, that's what that makes that part so kind of crazy, is when you're watching it the second time around and you're like, there's nothing hostile here. It's just sand. There's been nothing over here so far. So like he's just looking for any kind of out, which is a really an interesting character moment when you kind of know exactly what's going on with him. But dude, this part where they start going, he's like, I can't. Like the feeling of like, what?
You can't or you won't.
Right. It's terrifying. Like it gave me anxiety when it's like, wait a minute. Huh? And it feels like that moment in Blair Witch Project when Mike is like, oh, I threw the map away. It's like, what did you do? Like, it's this moment of like, you have damned us all. And just, they immediately turn on him and it's like, hell yeah, dude, I'd have that motherfucker like in a headlock, like, you left me out here to die. But like you said, that I wish there was just an objective because it makes sense for them to be like, hey, we are not coming in there to hang out. Like you can, recon within the perimeter of the Stargate, but link up and get right back. Like that kind of makes sense to me, because it's like, we don't know. We need to send like armored divisions in there if we're going to be, exploring and shit. We have no idea what's going on. So just to have him just be like, yeah, I don't know what the last symbol is. I have to figure it out. It's a different Stargate. It's like, you motherfucker, man. Like I kind of hate James Spader at that part, which is interesting. You could even say that that's a bit of a character arcish moment of like that he's kind of not he knew he didn't know what it was when he went in and that he would have to figure, but he didn't let them know, oh, I've got to find it somewhere. It's like, dude, that's need to know information. Like you deliberately withheld information from them. And it's kind of sketchy. It's like, man, that is kind of fucked up. Just to see to what extent he would go to, cause he's all about this shit. This is his life. He's fucking stays behind and lives there. These guys are like, dude, I want to go home and fucking, have sex with my wife and drink a beer. Like I want to get the fuck out of here. But this is, again, we're setting up. Kurt Russell has the bomb, yada, yada, yada. He's kind of arming it and putting it together. Jackson follows the tracks of that. I don't know what the hell you'd even call this thing. This
like a bison looking thing.
Yeah, whatever the fuck this thing is. And he ends up chasing it. Hilarity ensues. He gets dragged around. This is that part in these movies that I've done here frequently on the show is that it's just like going all through just these weird shenanigans, like running all through the desert and stuff. And that would hurt like fucking hell, dude, to get dragged like that for that long. Like shit, like you'd be shit. Him and his weak ass wrists, he'd probably be fucking dead. But
a hella carpet burn or something from the sand.
Oh my God, dude. But what's funny is they rock up to this place and here's these, just the kind of natives. And it's like the fact that they don't like, dude, take some cover. You don't know that all these people could turn on you and just start throwing spears at you or something. Like I wouldn't just stand up with binoculars and be like, hey, look at those guys. Like, dude, you got to be a little bit more like incognito. Like that shit gives me anxiety, just kind of watching them because you have no idea what these people are like. No fucking clue. But this reminds me a lot of two things. Is one, the feeling of meeting like the locals here is the feeling of like the Peter Jackson King Kong with like all of the people on the island. I can't remember what they're called. I don't know what exactly the island is. But then also, I grew up a huge fan of Rambo 3. Which is not a great movie. I think it's better than the second, but the First Blood is amazing. But this reminded me so much of Rambo 3 because that was kind of my first experience. Like, what is Iraq and the desert and stuff like that? Like, I had no fucking clue. But anyways, they're kind of trying to establish a connection. I love he forces the handshake and the dude just runs off screaming. It's like, yeah, like I mean, there's even cultures in America that like, I'm sorry, there's even cultures in the on Earth that are like, yeah, we don't shake hands, like we don't have physical touch. Like, I mean, the Japanese, like you just bow, like why would you walk up and like, you don't know, this kid could be a fucking tentacle. Like, just think of everything wrong that this kid could be. He could fucking shoot spikes out of his hands and blind you. You spit acid in your eyes. Like, you have no fucking clue what this kid's going to do. Like, shit like this gives me anxiety sometimes when I'm watching it. It's like, yes, I will go through, but the second that I even think something's up, like I want to go right back through the door. Like I don't want to hang out and like I don't want to try to establish a connection. Like I'll hang out once the connection has been established, but I'm not going to be the first one to walk in there and like, did you see that guy in the news? I can't remember the guy's name, but he kept trying to go to that island of like it's an isolated group. I can't remember if it's in the Amazon rainforest. It's like an isolated tribe that has no connections to man. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. He wanted to spread the word of the Christian God, and the tribesmen shot him with an arrow, and he died, right?
Yeah, they fucked him up. Like, I think they shot him from the beach with an arrow.
Oh my gosh.
And it killed him. But, you know, he was taking a video, and he had been told, like, I think repeated times not to go out there. And I think somebody gave him a ride, like on a boat, and got him out there. And then they didn't kill the guy who gave him a ride, but I think the officials, like, because you're not supposed to fuck with them. Like, it's like a legal matter. Like, you do not fuck with this tribe. So I think the guy who actually even got him in there is in a lot of shit as well. But yeah, they fucking killed him. And he was like, man, I can't wait to talk to these guys and show them blah, blah. And it's like, dude, it's just one of those things where it's like, that is what James Spader reminds me of in this movie, of just like, you're just a little bit too optimistic and like trusting right off the bat. Like, hell no. Like, I'll go and shake hands as long as I have a gun in the other one. Like, I'm meeting these motherfuckers.
I thought they did a pretty good job creating a language. You know, I couldn't imagine how hard that would be if you were in charge. You know, okay, we're making this movie. You need to make up a language for the actors to speak. You know, because I'm assuming that's what they did. You know, what do you think about that? Like, because I know you had some issues with like the subtitles too. You know, but you could kind of get the gist of what they were saying.
Right, yeah. That at first, it's really, really interesting because, you know, you're forced to kind of figure out through context clues, you know, and a lot of language, you know, human language is not even verbal. Like, it's the way you're moving your hands, your body language, the way you're looking at somebody. A lot of that can go pretty far. And I think that the actors, you know, especially that, like you said, you know, making this language up, I think that the actors having to kind of play into, like, you know, you're speaking something that the other person doesn't understand, but the fact that they kind of try and like work together on like, hey, like, this is, you know, through context clues. Like, Eric Avari is the main guy. He's in The Mummy. He's in all that shit. Eric Avari is like the bald dude. God, he's in so many fucking movies. That guy's IMDb is out the ass. But he sells that kind of, not only the religious kind of terror that Ra brings, but then also just the kind of giddiness. Like, when they show him the Eye of Ra here coming up, like, he's just so immediately enamored with them. And coming up with your own language and stuff, it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of 50-50. It's like, did they actually like, hey, this is a dialect, like Luc Besson and Mila Jovovich did that for Fifth Element. Like, they built a whole language to speak, and they would speak it to each other on set. So I'm like, did you build a language here, or is this just actors going like, you know, is it some kind of, or did you give them some kind of like what's his name? James Edward Olmos and Blade Runner, you know, like what he talks is like a mixture of like Latin and Chinese and a lot of different dialects. And he calls it this like street speak. So and that street speak is probably the best of all my favorite, like, little mini, I guess, languages and like science fiction, you know. I can't, you know, I'm not a huge fan of like Lord of the Rings, Elven and shit like that, but just the dialect here is interesting because it has human kind of feels at some point, but then it's, you know, your ear kind of deceives you. Like, when I'm listening to it, I'm like, no, I don't fucking have any idea. Like, I don't know. You know, you think you might get some kind of context clue, but I like that we kind of have this. It's a little exchange, you know. He brings them. I guess this. I don't know what this drink is, if it's water or what. He gives him half of the Fifth Avenue bar, and I was like, I don't know why, but that just made me laugh.
Away.
Yeah, it just made me laugh my ass off. It's him pulling out the Fifth Avenue bar, which is not. Hold on, real quick, by the way. And I'll ask you this, and then I'll answer it to give you time to come up with your own answer. If you met this group of people and you had to bring a candy bar, and it had to be their first impression of a candy bar on Earth, what would it be? Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, just to give you a second to like think about it. It's definitely got to be either Reese's or Three Musketeers. Milky Way's pretty good too, you know, but Three Musketeers and Reese's are like, these are our best products, you know, like that's what I would bring to like my Thanksgiving trade-off in the desert would be Reese's Cups or like a Three Musketeers. But what would you hand them?
Well, when I was a kid watching this with my mom, she's always really liked fart jokes and stuff like that. Really just weird sense of humor, I guess. But she kept, every time we would watch this, she would just say, what if he thought it was just like a turd that he unwrapped?
Oh, God. That's fucking funny.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Fifth Avenue, man, I would say... I don't know. I really like mounds. That could be kind of nice.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of mounds.
They're more popular than people let on. I love the Almond Joys, the mounds, the coconut chocolate kind of stuff. What else? Zero bars are really underrated.
Ooh,
love Zero bars.
For sure.
So good. I remember eating those with my dad growing up, and he's like, they made those when I was a kid, and dad was born in like 49 or 48. Or 50. Like, he's like, yeah, I was growing up eating those candy bars as a kid. He's like, it's so weird to watch, and they're still making them. He's like, they never changed them. I was like, that's fucking, because they're amazing. Like, they're so underrated. Anyways, enough with the candy. Back to Stargate. We kind of get this, they kind of exchange and they start walking back to, this is like a camp outside of where they're really all kind of set up. But I like and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's Alexis Cruz, and he's and I don't know if they're brother and sister. It's like Shari and then Skara, the boy and the girl who are kind of like the teenager, young adult people, I know I'm probably saying I can say their real names fine. It's Emily Avital and Alexis Cruz. But I'm sure I'm butchering their names. It's like her name is spelled Cher. It's like Share. And I was like, I got love to believe on. That's like all I could think of when I read it. But basically, again, it's Shari and then the Skaara. How the fuck do you pronounce that? Skara? Like Skara? Okay, whatever. I'm going to call him Scar. But the thing I like is that all these kids are fucking with him. What is wrong with the dude walking next to him who has like the low down like brow and he has an underbite? Like, and I don't mean this. I'm not trying to make fun of this kind of, like, he looks like he is kind of special. You know what I mean? Like, legitimately, right. I kind of was like, dude, is that a person with Down syndrome? Like, I legitimately thought that. And again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be, weird or anything. But I was like, I literally kind of sat there for a second. I was like, that guy looks just a little bit, he looks like he's a couple of pennies shy of $1. There's just something kind of about that. And I don't think this is a guy who has Down syndrome, but I think they do that because when he gets killed, you really just kind of like, I don't really care about it. It grossed me out, like there's something about that guy that's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's just a very interesting, like, casting choice. But what was
he is.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, he's really interesting looking. His name is Giannin Loeffler. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his first name, but yeah, it seems like they just casted him because he was really interesting looking, and they wanted to sort of build like this, culture of people. Like, how do they look? And they just thought, well, this guy's really interesting looking. He would fit this role. And going back to when he dies, that's what was his name? Alexis Cruz. It's like, I guess, his best friend in the movie.
Right. Yeah. That guy we're talking about right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, what did you think about, when this thing first popped up and you kind of start seeing the city, and it, in a weird way, it felt like a Call of Duty map, it's like, it feels like something you'd run around on like 1v1 and fuck people up, like there's something about that it had a very familiar feeling to me, but at the same time, it kind of had like a Star Wars kind of like Tatooine feel. Like, I was just seeing what you thought about the first impressions of, I guess this is really the only civilization, that we see. This is the only kind of society. So I don't know if there's more on this planet, but this is basically all we're going to get, except for when Ra lands, So, like, what did you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of maybe like Iraq. And I think that was chosen because of the, ancient Egyptian culture and like kind of project like maybe what they looked like. And so, I mean, I think it was really good. Like this movie really does take me somewhere, and that a lot has to do with seeing it as a kid. So when I see, the city and everything, it definitely is what I would think it would be, given everything that we're shown, with like the context of like ancient Egypt. And so for me, I think it works. I think everything about it's a little isolating, right? Because like we don't see anything else. It's just this small sort of kind of area. But I guess that would make sense if he just brought if he just brought like, people over into this planet. It wouldn't necessarily be like a full planet of continents and different cultures. It would just be like this isolated area. But I love the chicken scene where they're like, he's like, it tastes like chicken when they're like feeding him and stuff. I think that's really fun. It's almost like an armadillo.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was listening to you, but I was looking up somebody's like, hey, what's with that kid in Stargate? Like a couple of people have asked the question I'm asking. And I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy. And someone's like, yeah, it looks like he has dwarfism. It looks like he might have like Down syndrome. And someone goes, he can't help it. His name is French Stewart. And I was like, I fucking laughed my ass off, dude. I was like, that is so, oh my God, that's so fucking funny. Poor French Stewart. Sorry, it just made me laugh my ass off. But yeah, just like I said, this whole world, it kind of gives a little bit of like the beginning of Exorcist, kind of feel, just the running around and like the excavation and stuff like that. But one thing, let me see here real quick. Sorry, I was pulling up. Yeah, sorry. There's something about it where it does kind of have this like Middle Eastern feel, but then it feels like something old, but it feels like something new. Like it feels like something kind of caught between worlds. Like, and it certainly has like that fifth element kind of feel. But we see, again, the Eye of Ra, everybody drops down. They see it on his necklace. We're just kind of seeing that, okay, well, now this is like C-3PO in Return of the Jedi. They're like, oh, he's a god now, he's a god man. It's the symbol for, Ra. They think that, that he sent us here. I love him fucking with the necklace. He's like, oh, I wonder what had given him that idea. But no, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, like the necklace is really, really cool. I like how they designed it.
Yeah, I like that thing. And I'm sure I'm sure that's a crazy good prop that somebody has somewhere. Like, oh yeah, that's James Spader's Eye of Ra necklace from
I would wear it.
Hell yeah, dude. That thing's fucking cool. Of course, they're going to have to abandon the base camp. We've got this, they've got the storm coming in, which is interesting too, because when I was first watching this, I was like, dude, I feel like all of these guys are about to die. And really almost none of them die. Like one of them, I think gets killed. Like I think maybe one or two of them, or is it like, I know here in the temple, I think the guards like Anubis, they just walk up and knock him out, and then they throw him in that water pit or whatever. But it's like, wow, there's really not a whole lot. Like I thought this was going to be like when the Colonial Marines show up to LV 426 or 246 or 426. I thought when they showed up, I was like, dude, they're going to get fucking obliterated. And I think part of that was because I saw French Stewart and I was like, yeah, he's kind of annoying. Like I like French Stewart, but I wouldn't mind watching him getting like cut in half. I'm just saying. But they all kind of, they split up. They put the perimeter, kind of walls up. There's, this dust storm coming in. Dude, I was playing for a long time. I was playing the Mad Max game. Came out as like a tie-in game for Fury Road. I got really into that game. It's a lot of fun. It was $10. Very, very, very worth the $10. You'll have a lot of fun playing that. Just imagine Fallout with cars. And that's basically what it is. But you would be driving through the desert, and all of a sudden you would look to your left and it would be that like just this crazy storm, and it would flip your car over and like shit would come flying out at you. And let me tell you, when one of those things hit, it's fucking terrifying. Like I was scared for my life driving through those things. So I get why, they immediately, everybody drops their shit to kind of like try and cover up from this storm. Cause like that shit is, good God, man. Like I got anxiety just seeing that big wall of like sand come towards the, towards like, I guess like their camp and shit. But, like kind of like what you're saying, this is where we get that moment. They're sitting down. They're kind of trading some food, trading some drink. And I like the fact that it's Russell here who kind of has the idea of like, if they know one symbol, maybe they know more. And like, yeah, that's logical conclusion. Like, that's really interesting. But it's a bit of a twist too, because it's like when they go to write, at first it's like, oh, is he writing a symbol that he can't, no, we don't write that symbol. And it's like, no, they flat out they're all illiterate. Like that's really crazy. And just the power that Ra would have to extend to where it's like, you can, like, even when he's not there, they still don't read or write, because it's just this kind of, what's the word? I'm trying to think. I guess there's just kind of superstition probably about like, we don't read or write because Rob will see us,
Yeah, it's like a dogmatism. There's maybe he put this idea of a consequence. If you write, then, something bad may happen.
Yeah, right. Like you can't have fish on Fridays and there's some weird shit. But yeah, they drag James Spader off. They clean him up. They offer him a prostitute. Which is just like, for one thing, I was like, oh man, is this the first time that they've ever this can't be the first time they just offered her up for sex. You know what I mean? Like they did that way too quickly for them just to have been like, yeah, no, I've never done this before. And the fact that he starts getting pissed and, she's like, basically, I don't know what they're saying here. Again, mine doesn't have subtitles. Like when she's talking to her, I guess this is her dad and he gets on his knees and stuff like that. Like, does this have subtitles for you or is this all blank?
I'm watching it on YouTube, but yeah, no subtitles. Now I have the DVD and there are subtitles every time that they're speaking, in their language. And in fact, when they first put this movie at an audience screening, it didn't get as well received as they wanted. So they actually went back and they added some subtitle points to it, like Raw speaking, and it really like lifted up the audience perception of it in the pre-screenings. So,
oh shit! That's really interesting. I did not know that. Like, well, just the fact that like, again, there's some parts that really works. Like watching Arrival without subtitles at first is interesting, and once we've kind of figured out like, hey, she is learning the language, then we're given subtitles because our character has kind of like earned it. And I do like that. But I was watching this and I was like, what the fuck is going on, man? Like I felt like such an idiot because it's like, am I missing something? Like, I feel like such a jackass. Like, am I just supposed to pick up on like context clues? Like, I was like, I'm really not sure what the hell is going on. And there really, from what I've read, there's been no reason why they've ever not done it. That all the free versions basically don't have it. Like, have you read anything about why they just didn't do that?
I haven't. It's really interesting, because this movie was put on YouTube in 2020, and I started seeing a lot more movies added to YouTube last year. Obviously everybody's at home, and so I guess maybe they just maybe there could have been a bug in the uploading process because there's already closed captioning, so it kind of like took it off. But it really doesn't make sense that on the free versions that there is no subtitles, because it really takes away from the movie. Because like I just imagine if I had never seen it before, it would make me dislike the movie. Like it would be a bad thing to not have that. And if I were the director or was so passionate about this movie, I would want to go in here and try and get that fixed. I'm surprised the studio, I'm not sure which studio, if it's Paramount or whatever, would actually reach out to YouTube and Hulu and be like, hey, we need to, do a re-upload here. We need the context. We this is a different language. We've got to have subtitles in this movie.
Right. Yeah. Like, and none of this shit, really makes any sense without it, and it's like, well, you have a language that has no subtitles and people who refuse to read or write. I don't know what the fuck is going on at this point. I'm like, what the fuck else do I have here? But I guess also we should say, who is this girl again? I'm so sorry. I'm drawing a fucking blank.
Cherie.
Yeah, Cherie, played by, and this woman is absolutely knockout. I think she's only gotten hotter as she's older too. Mila Avatar.
Yeah.
Oh my good God. She's got a total like Mila Jovovich like kind of feel, especially like looking at like older pictures of her and stuff. She's an Israeli actress, writer, and director. Oh shit. Okay, cool. But yeah, of course, that makes total sense if you're trying to film something out but dude, I mean, good God. Like, I mean, she's great in this movie. Not only that, but she's absolutely gorgeous. And what's funny, I just looked up and I was like, she's way hotter older. Like, she's super, super hot when she's like 50. But they're offering, they're trying to offer her up as like I guess some kind of sex appetizer. And he's trying to draw symbols. She won't look at him. And frustrated, he walks off. But as he walks off, she actually ends up, kind of what does she do? Like the symbol for Earth. I think that's what kind of, he's like, you've seen this symbol, like, what this is. And she figures out that or what does he figure out that it's Earth?
It might be a symbol on the Stargate, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because I think it's the 3 moons are the things that he needs. That's the 7th symbol for him to unlock the Stargate. So that might be it. But just how good he is at communicating here. He touches his eyes like, you've seen this symbol, and she's like, yeah, and he just sticks his hand out like, lead the way, and I'm like, I love that. I thought that was great. It's just you can say 1,000 words in just one action and just be like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's do this. But I say, right here, we're about to get the attack on the pyramid. I say, let's take a break, grab something to drink, go use the restroom. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah. Guys, don't go anywhere. We will be right back with the second part of our coverage of Stargate.
G'day gang, it's Matt from Midnight Double Feature, and it's time for a commercial break. I know, exciting, right? Probably favorite part of the episode, I'm sure. If you want to support the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review on iTunes to help us rank up in the charts and expose us to more potential listeners. Also, to make sure you're not missing out or anything, please consider following us on social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the works. And if you want to get to know us more personally and our community, join our Facebook community group, where we post memes, polls, trailers, and more. And you can get in on all the fun with the MDF game. If you want to be a super fan and show the world, why not pick up a t-shirt or a coffee mug at our store, midnightdoublefeature.com. And if you want even more content, be sure to check out our Breaking Bad podcast, Bad Crystal. And if you want even more content than that, you can join the Green Room by signing up for our Patreon for access to bonus feed episodes, discount on merchandise, and more. And if you want even more content, geez, dude, calm down. That's like a lot as it is. Get a bit of a stalker now. Don't get too greedy. Damn. There's always older episodes you can check out. Seriously, dude, just dial it back a bit. Seriously. Wow. Anyways, back to the episode.
Welcome back, boys and girls. Coming at you with the second half of our coverage of Stargate, as we are freshly squeezed, as we always like to say and always will. But who's about to be freshly squeezed is these soldiers, because these guys are fucking, like, it's like Predator, This whole scene, I just expected to see the red lights pop up and like that weird click. But it's... And honestly, just kind of jumping right into it, it's an okay scene. It just kind of feels a little bit like the hallway thing in the Matrix, with like Neo behind the pillars, like, and all that shit. But I didn't love this, it's like, it feels like a little lackluster, but I like the mystery of who this person is knocking them out. That's what feels very Predator about it,
Yeah, and I agree. Like, it definitely has that Matrix vibe from like the pillars and stuff. And I guess they're just in the movie, they're just trying to build up, like, introducing, these like the villain. Because, once you show what's scary, it loses a little bit. So like just kind of milking it just a little bit to get some, some tension going on, may have been more the purpose of the scene. But yeah, when you do see their costumes, like, it's kind of cool. Like the whole, like, it's almost like a horse kind of face, a dog face with some ears.
Yeah, I don't know how in the world to, like, I mean, literally, I would just be like, yeah, it looked like Anubis. Like it looked like a cat dog head, with a man's body. I mean, God, imagine trying to fill out a fucking police sketch artist and be like, all right, what does the guy look like? And you're like, okay. Trying to figure that shit out. But again, I did like it because it had such a Predator kind of feel to it. And they didn't blow their load right here on showing you exactly, oh my God, this is what they look like. And they're so scary and blah, blah. And it's like, I didn't really, the pyramid itself, the ship was ominous enough. I was like, holy shit. It's like seeing the Super Star Destroyer, in Star Wars, like it's just the Star Destroyer, but bigger. And you're like, oh shit. But just the ship alone and stuff is what's really ominous to me. But kind of moving on beyond that, after everybody gets fucking knocked out, we get this kind of nice moment with O'Neill, and then the boy. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I've been fucking it up all night. But we get this nice kind of moment where what he's going through, and that this kid, it's just so enamored with this guy, like a son would be, like wants to know everything their dad does, like kids mimicking their dad shaving in the shower, kind of, or shaving in the bathroom. Like it kind of feels like that, like just mimicking what he's doing, and he smokes the cigarette and he coughs. It's a really nice moment. I think both of these guys absolutely nail it. Both of them do a fantastic job of someone who's at like the peak of life and who's young and vibrant and has all this like wonder and has all this like, man, and just this guy who's kind of at the end of his rope. Not even kind of, I mean, he's going to blow himself up. Just a guy who's absolutely, at his wit's end. And it's a crazy juxtaposition to see these people on totally opposite sides of life, and in just totally different times and place, a different time and place. And I did like, when he actually goes to grab the gun, which is, man, it just gave me anxiety. Watch, I was like, oh fuck, and I was like, well, what does he know? He has no idea. That could be a fucking toothbrush for all he knows. But once he grabs it, Kurt Russell's reaction is great. Like it made me kind of jump, and I was like, oh shit, and it definitely, him standing up and pointing it at the kid too, being like, get the fuck out of here. It's like, whoa. Like I really like this moment in terms of like a character moment for him. Which is something that it makes me, I'm like, man, I wish they had these moments with James Spader. I get he has a romantic thing, but it just seemed, I don't know, it just seemed so lacking to me. But I love this scene. I think this is probably, probably one of the best in the movie. I'm going to get some water.
No, you're good. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, and I never thought about this, but it does almost seem like it's almost more Kurt Russell's movie, because just how his screen time, what he's going through with his character, James Spader almost kind of, it's almost like before you said that, I thought this was like James Spader's movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's the star, but Kurt Russell, I mean, he was in The Thing. I mean, it's Kurt Russell, and also how his character is, he very much just grabs the spotlight almost. And I always have loved Kurt Russell, and it might have been you actually. We were talking about this. Something about Walt Disney was just ranting and raving about Kurt Russell was like the next, like he was just the best actor of all time, or something. Was that? Were we having that conversation?
No, I'm pretty sure because basically Kurt Russell was like a child star at the time. Like he was very popular from. Very popular from a young age, and the story is that apparently Walt Disney's last words were Kurt Russell. Like he was just like, Kurt Russell will be blah blah. I think that some people, I don't know if that's 100%, 100% true, but I think it might be one of those things that chopped up to like urban legend. But I'm reading the article on it now, but they're like, did he really actually say that? It's like, so there's some kind of contention there. I guess there's some kind of question, but yeah, Walt Disney was very interested in like Kurt Russell. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, that guy went on to be one of the biggest actors of all time. And even stuff in like Overboard, like it's a cheesy 80s movie, but I love that movie. I love that movie. I can't, and he's great in that, but he's also like, he's fucking McCready in The Thing. And I was like, oh, it's so awesome. He still, and both of them, this is a really, really great, it's short, but great scene between them. And we get a little bit more of this, relationship. Not even so much relationship. I guess this is where we're getting a little bit more of the plot, but we're getting it by way of two of our characters kind of getting together, with Sherry and also with Daniel. But just them kind of finding the common ground in the language, I thought was like, man, that's fucking awesome. The breakthrough, like the excitement of it, of like, yes, like we actually have some kind of common ground on which we can actually like start building shit now. We see, again, I almost said French Russell, French Stewart. We get the view of the sarcophagus. We still can't reach base. They're simply not there. one thing I was watching this, and when he's trying to fucking figure out where Daniel is, and he's like, yeah, he's like, and he's mimicking, he's like, glasses, blah, blah. He's like, chicken man. And I was like, just imagine just the society of people, like, and you're the guy to discover it. You're the one who figured it all out. And that society knows you as chicken man. It's like, oh my fucking God. Like, there's not a lot of comedic moments in this, and it's not downright hilarious, but it is something where it's like, you know what? I buy it though. I like it. I hate the line. He's like, does the name dweeb mean anything to you? And I was like, that's fucking stupid. That's dumb. But of course, he uses, that's basically his son. I'm just going to call it his son because that's basically what he's doing. But he shows up, I thought you couldn't speak their language. And like, this is kind of ominous. The way he walks in, it feels like, have you been lying? You get the feeling of he's got a little bit of distrust after he said, I could figure out the thing, but he can't really. So it's like, well, now you start to question a lot of other stuff. I just had to learn it to produce it. The language hasn't been spoken in more than 1,000 years. And this is where they lay out all the stuff of Ra, of like, what did you think of all this backdrop and mythology of Ra, and like just the kind of, I guess like his origin?
It's exactly kind of the premise in the book Chariots of the Gods, and maybe even like kind of what Ancient Aliens touches on. So I think it's really accurate in terms of that. I don't believe, obviously, I'm not saying that that's true, but I think the film was really ahead of its time at that point with introducing that, because going back to the other documentary that I was talking about called The Mystery of the Sphinx that was hosted by Charlton Heston, where they've got these two scientists that are really showing evidence that the Sphinx could actually be much older than what Egyptologists claim that it is. And so there's this puzzling mystery of, well, how do these people, create these structures in ancient Egypt? They're just like so finely cut. This idea that aliens or like astronaut aliens or whatever came down to influence that. It's a brilliant idea, and I love thinking about it, and I think it's definitely possible. So the whole origin story of Ra, and how in ancient Egypt, Ra was like the sun god. And I think that it's really well developed how, in terms of the context of this movie. So that scene, and I actually watched that specific scene a couple times because I just thought it was really cool when he's explaining the origin of how the people were brought over, and he was banning reading and writing. So I think that is really, it was done really well. And then another thing that I was thinking about too, how I was saying, like, this it's paced really fast. And that may lead to why it kind of feels kind of cheesy and cliche. But now that I think about it, the relationship between James Spader and Sherry, it's kind of hard to say that, but his love interest, it builds so fast, right? But I believe it. And it's kind of amazing how little screen time she has, how fast paced their relationship development is, but how genuine I believe their love interest. That comes down to the acting a lot, but it's also just kind of incredible how, little screen time and how fast these cuts can actually build what it does in terms of like how it makes you feel and how you believe, the character development. So I think that's kind of really cool that movies can do that,
Right. Yeah. Well, and like you're saying, it's not something where it's like, I wouldn't like literally subscribe to this, but it's believable of like, that's an interesting take on, how exactly, all this mythology and the, Egyptian culture, like how all of this started. That's really, really fucking cool. And just like, yes, it is aliens, but at the same time, like, it's not, it is aliens, but not, it's kind of like there's an influence. They didn't build the pyramids. Like, we still built the pyramids, but we based it off of this thing, like it's kind of interesting where it's not like, yeah, aliens like lived on Earth and, they were here for like years. It's like, no, that didn't happen. But I feel like that dude from Ancient Aliens all the time, where he's like, aliens, it's like just that meme of him with his hands up, like aliens. And James Spader, he figures out this is the whole origin of Ra, where he basically is, searching for life. He found the humans, like you said, he transported them back to mine, I guess, like the caves for this mineral that's the building block of all this stuff. And he outlawed reading or writing, would let anybody learn. They find the symbols that they need for the Stargate, but of course the bottom one is like all whittled off and, fucked up. And just the Kurt Russell just turning around and being like, all right, let's go home. Like just content with like, yep, that's fucking it. Like, well, we gotta go. It's one of those things where I know that we're gonna be back here at the end, and you kind of know how the movie ends. So it's like, well, I know where this is going, but I'm curious how they're gonna get there. Like, what are they gonna do now? Because it's not gonna end on like, yeah, they go back to the ship and they all get enslaved and they live there for until they die. And it's like, no, there's a positive ending with this. So like, it's got to be, it's something. But this is one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this feels kind of like, what are they gonna do now? It's like maybe it's just cynical movie watching. Maybe I'm just an asshole. But I was like, it's kind of like, well, what are they going to do now? I know they got to do something. But they come back to the Stargate. They find the Super Star Destroyer on there. The fight ensues. We're fighting a Anubis, and I cannot remember the other one's name. Do you know the other guard's name? It's Anubis, and that's going to drive me crazy because there's the. Oh shit! That is why do I always do that? There's Horus and Anubis. I think because one of those guys, I'm gonna butcher his name, but I think it's Jaimin. I think Jaimin Hwansu. I'm butchering that so bad. He's in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's in a bunch of shit. He's been in a lot of stuff, and I'm sorry I'm butchering his name, but he's the blackguard. And then the other guy is, I'm not sure, Carlos Lauchu. I don't know why I do that. I have to spell it out sometimes, and then I'm just like, oh, Lauchu, there we go, got it. But there's some hella names in this where it's like the guy from the MCU, French Stewart. Then there's like Chris Fields, Darren Webster, Giannin Loeffler. Like there's some crazy ass names. Like when you're going through this, when you're going through the fucking roster on Google. But like I said, we get this like fight. He gives him the gun. He's like, shoot anything that comes down here, and the nuke is gone. Like, oh fuck. It's also, blowing that up, and that's such a shitty thing to do. But like now it has literally fallen into the wrong hands. It's like, well, this is a problem for a whole other fucking reason now. Like, what did you think of that reveal?
I think it's perfect timing too to just bring in the significance of like this nuke, because at this point we've kind of forgotten about it, because you only saw that right when they come over into the Stargate. So now it's like introducing you to Ra. And he's finally coming in and, interrupting their kind of ideas of getting back home. And also you get to see more of like Anubis and Horus, like the villains and like their weaponry. And, as through the mind of a kid, like when I was young watching this, I loved all the submachine guns.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like I was totally into that. Oh my gosh. So one of my favorite things too is like the costumes that they wear. Maybe not the headpiece. The headpiece is kind of cool. It works for sure.
Yeah,
it's a little weird, but everything else on their costumes I really like. But the main guy playing Ra, Jay Davidson. Oh my gosh! Like the costume design, the set design of like his lair or area. And all the little kids running around. I thought that was really cool. Just it really aids in like transporting you somewhere.
And it's great world building. It's great. Mm-hmm. Just like, man, this feels like such a real place. And the thing that I love is, apparently, and I was reading this on IMDb, so I'm not 100% sure, but they apparently in the commentary, they were like, because it kind of weirded me out too. It's like, man, these are like a bunch of kids like that are like half naked running around. Like, this is fucking weird. It just makes me uncomfortable. And apparently in the commentary, they did that on purpose to build this unease when you see Ra, because there's a very androgynous kind of approach to him. And there's like kids kind of running around. It's like, yeah, it just builds this kind of like, man, this mystique around this very, it feels like Gozer at the end of Ghostbusters,
yes.
just it kind of feels like this like ancient, evil, I guess, just this thing that's been around for eons, and it's not male or female. It's just kind of a thing. And I really enjoyed that. The thing that cracks me up though is when the head turns into like his head, and I was like, okay, that looks terrible, but I'll forgive it. Like, it's not bad. It made me laugh, and I was like, I don't know about that. But again, that's iconic. I knew that scene. I'd seen that in commercials for stuff. I feel like that's a scene where they're like, now on DVD, like back in the early 2000s, I feel like something like this would probably have popped up in one of those. But he brings, he brings that, breaks it. What does he say here? Because again, I don't have subtitles. I think he says something like, you brought this to destroy me, or you tried to destroy me, where he's talking about the bomb. And James Spader's reaction to it, because he has no fucking idea, and we're like, oh yeah, you have no idea what's going on.
He definitely, the whole androgyny and, just almost the inappropriate nature of the kids, like you were saying, just building that like weirdness and like just uneasiness. I mean, I didn't know that until you read that off, but that makes so much sense. Just how much detail goes into like, okay, how do we make this scene feel like we want it to? And I think that's an interesting choice, as it is a little inappropriate and you feel like wrong. Like, what are you doing with these kids like this, Right. But I do like how they chose to go like this androgynous route with Raw. I think that's really cool. There's a feminine, masculine, like you just kind of in between, and the actor just nails it.
Right. Yeah, he does such a great job, just because it just adds this really great veil of like mystery, where like at first when you see the head, kind of change, it just looks like, a guy with short hair. And then later on, like when he's sitting on the bed and he has his hair down all long, and I was like, man, this is a very interesting character. It's like, and I love the fact that it's just a person, there's no way to really kind of sexualize it either way, that it's like, wow, that's a really interesting, and trying to find someone that would really fit that kind of description must have been a really pain in the ass casting choice too. But I'm sure once they saw you said it's Jay Davidson.
Yes, Jay Davidson.
Dude, they must have I would have jumped for joy if that's what I was looking for, and I found it, be like, hell yeah, that's fucking perfect. But yeah, James Spader freaks out over the bomb. I don't even care what his character is called anymore. His name is James Spader. But basically he this is where Kurt Russell gets the gun and kills one of the guards, knocks one of them out. But I love just the kids building the shield around him, and it's like, oh, like, I mean, that anybody would probably stop. Anybody would be like, man, I don't want to kill these kids. But just the fact that it's Kurt Russell, it's like, oh, that is such a double like bastard bite, But of course, they knock him out. That's one thing that you were talking about, like the armor. Once the Anubis and the other guys' helmets are off, like that's really fucking cool looking, like armor. I really, really love the way that looks. Like, that's one thing you can't knock this movie for, is it's spent a lot on its production value, and they did a really, really good job. And this, I think this was a huge success at the box office too. I can't remember. I think they shot it for like 50, 60 million. It made over 100 or something. I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably talking out of my ass, but basically his little plan fails. They throw him in the pit with his buddies. He finds the rest of his men down there. And then we get this crazy, like, the bombing of the city. And it's like, why do they do this? And it's like, is it just because they housed the guys and like fed them and stuff? Like, that's the only thing I can think of. But it's like, I didn't really get an explanation for what was going on here,
Well, I think if you go back to the origin story of Raw, I think maybe the best explanation is what's happening is he's kind of realizing with these new people that have come through the Stargate, James Spader, Kurt Russell, and their crew, they've influenced, because now they're kind of writing in the sand, they're breaking the rules.
Right.
So I think this is an attempt to, show his dominance, get some submission, and just kind of show that he is, ultimately the god here, and to kind of reaffirm his presence. So, bombing and raining down is almost a punishment from above, as if a god, right?
Right.
And I think I think that's kind of where that he's going. But, you know, it isn't necessarily super clear. But I
right,
do.
it's like he just does it because he's bad. You know, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess it makes sense. Like to squash any kind of, you don't want these people figuring this shit out. You know, like that's the last thing that you want. And that's exactly what these guys are here to do, too. You know, really fuck your shit up.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you know, it said on Earth there was an uprising. And so that's why he, you know, destroyed the Stargate, and because he didn't want any of the people on this planet to go against him, because ultimately his goal is to live forever. So, you know, he's mining that material if he needs to. I'm assuming he could just repossess anyone that he wanted if something were to happen to his mortal body. And then, you know, they have that machine thing that you lay in that like preserves you and heals you from wounds and stuff, which is really, really neat. It's got kind of an alien medical kind of vibe to me. Yeah, but also when the ships come flying out of the pyramid, if you look close, you can see the strings dangling.
No way.
Yeah. If you look really close, there's like a shot where it's like the ship's flying and it's like a blue sky, and you can see it like dangling from like the strings.
That's fucking crazy. Well, and I love the way that they look. Like when they come out of the building, how their wings kind of like zzz, and they come out like after they get out of the ship. And I was like, dude, that is fucking gnarly. Like just the design of them. But you know, there is something like what you said earlier. There is definitely a kind of like Canadian 90s science fiction television show to this. Like there is a low budget kind of feel to it. And that can be kind of charming too. Like I love a lot of low budget movies. You know, it doesn't have to be $100 million movie, which by the way, they shot this for 55. It made 196 million. Like, fuck, man, that is Jesus, you made 3 times your budget. Like that's crazy. That's a crazy success, man. But the thing, yeah, there's just there's something about Ra that now we're kind of getting to character. And this is one thing that I really take points away from this movie on is like, what the fuck is Ra doing? Like I understand, like I'm going to, you know, destroy the people for whatever, you know, it's like, you know, he's going to send the bomb, you know, or like he's going to fuck with his own people because he harvests them and they do stuff for him. That totally makes sense now that we've kind of talked about this, you know, this bombing. But then sending the bomb back to Earth is like, why? Like it's just bad guy shit. You know, it just feels like because movie. And I'm, you know, if anything, it would be like, I'm going to go through the Stargate myself and I'm going to enslave everybody there. Like, okay, that makes sense. You know, his motives are just kind of like pencil twirling mustache. Like, you know, it's like, right. It doesn't really, it doesn't benefit you in any way to do that. If anything, it would, you know, you need more humans, right? Like, I don't know. It's just, it's not great character motivation to me. I don't love it. I love the performance. It just wasn't there for me in the writing of like, you know, I need something a little bit more here. We've got a great villain. We've got a great performance. We've got a great look, you know, even some good lines. Like there can only be one Ra. And it's like, damn, that's fucking awesome. That's a great line. But it's like, yeah, but you're just kind of this like bad guy just to be a fucking bad guy. It's like, I don't know. I just didn't love it. That's one of my biggest gripes.
Yeah, it's almost like he's insulted that they brought a nuke, so he's just going to, you know, send it back and blow up the whole human species and stuff just because to get back at them. That's really the only reason that I think I can see.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense. Like when they show up, you know, and we've got all of our characters talking. I did look up the transcripts. It's you know, just in case. It's fucking weird. Yeah, they walk in. What does she say? She's like, Shuri, what happened here? Ra punished us. Why? What happened to Daniel? What happened to Daniel? No answer. Son, we should not have helped the strangers. And that's Kasuf. Like Kasuf is the guy from the Mummy that I was talking about. I cannot remember his name again, but he's basically saying like we should not have helped the strangers. And the fact that he's still like devout to this is what's pathetic. Is like watching this, like your whole life around you, you know, this God that you follow, it just came in and bombed your whole life. And it's like, and you're still like this devout, like, oh, we shouldn't have helped them. Like, man, that is some crazy levels of fear that you have instilled in people. You know, that's an iron fucking grip. Yeah, but yeah, that whole scene, it's actually an interesting moment for Kasuf as well, because he has a total 180 by the end of this movie.
Yeah, what's interesting you said there is about fear. This is really revolving around religious ideology. Ancient Egyptian culture, belief in a god, and in religion there is especially mainstream religions. There is a lot of fear. And people have a hard time, I think, letting go, even if they're seeing, because there's a scene in this movie where they capture like Anubis and Horus, and Daniel or James Spader says, look, to the, I think his name is Eric Avari. He's just a man, because he gets down on his knees to like pray, like, oh my God, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're breaking the rules. There's all this fear displayed. And then, you can just see the defiance building up after that. He realizes, this is just a man, that this idea of this otherworldly being isn't as, spiritually divine as, you've been led. And so I think that there's a bit of that shown in his face, because he's a really good actor. He really does show a lot in his face. In that scene.
No, hell yeah. Like, and the thing this is what drives me nuts is, once he wakes up, he's basically out of like his little med bay. And he, he's walking around and stuff. The cloth on his face fucking freaks me out. I hate that shit. I'm like, like when he wakes up and that shit's like in his mouth, and like, no, that would give me fucking anxiety. This is when he goes to meets with Ra, and again, no fucking subtitles. I couldn't figure any of this shit out. Thank God for thank God for the kind soul that transcribed this entire fucking movie on stargate.sg1s.solutions.com. Like, what a fucking trooper, man.
We thank you.
Yeah, but basically Daniel's like, I was dead. He's like, this is why I chose your race. It's so easy to repair. You've advanced so much. Harness the power of the atom. They're referencing to the bomb. I'm going to send your weapon back to you, blah, blah. We've already gone into this stuff. And he even asked me, he's like, why would you do that? And he's like, I created your civilization. Now I will destroy it. It's like, not an answer. Like, I still understand the action. Like, I'm asking for an explanation to the action. Like, even the movie dodges that bullet, and it's like, no, like, we're not even going to try it. It's like, in a 2 hour long movie, it's like, come on, I could have used a little bit more. I could have used a little bit more of that. And he says,
I agree with you there.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just not there for me. But he says, but before my workers question my authority, you will prove that I am their god by killing your companions. If you refuse, I'll destroy all those who have even seen you. Like, damn, that's fucking awesome. I love him taking the necklace. There can only be one Ra. Where we get a little bit more of like the setup of exactly what's to come. Skara is saying Ra has called an assembly and execution. Skara, I want you to listen. She beckons him to come forward, and she's like, we can't let this happen. I want you to know that Daniel told me about where our people came from and why we can no longer live as slaves. And I'm reading this out also for anybody who is like, man, what the fuck were they saying right there? Like, if you watch this movie recently and you're like, what the fuck happened, dude? That's exactly what happened. So I was reading that shit off, because I'm like, you know what? Also for you watching it too, is like, oh, cool. I actually know what the hell is going on. And like, I want some kind of just, yeah, we just said fuck it because it's a movie from 1994. But like, okay, cool. Like, I'll take that. Like, just why the hell would you do that? I've never, as big as this movie was, I've never, I watch and rent a lot of stuff for the podcast. And sometimes, you get on a certain platform, they don't have subtitles. It's like, okay, well, sometimes that happens. But to just like not have the parts right there is just so mind boggling to me. I don't understand what the point, I don't know. I don't understand what the point with that would be. So, the next day, everybody assembled, around the stands of the pyramid. I love, this is amazing design of like this world. Like, holy shit. Just the sea of just like brown, like the clothing and just this very raggedy kind of thing. And then just this beautiful red carpet leading up to this open, what the temple, is it Temple of Giza? Is it temple?
Pyramid.
Thank you, Jesus. Just leading up to the Pyramid of Giza. And just this were one of the few moments where we really get kind of everybody in the same room because this is not really going to happen again.
Right.
We have all the people there. We have the 4, and they're kind of like the 4 or 5 horsemen of like the apocalypse who show up, with all the army gear on, Kurt Russell and his guys. And you have Ra right there. You have Anubis. You have both of them there. And he gets in, he gives him the little signal with the Zippo lighter. I was like, that's a nice callback. I like that. But I don't love the fact that they're just like, yeah, shoot him and run. It's like, well, that's kind of anticlimactic. Like, I thought there was going to be some kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean, saving Jack Sparrow at the end kind of shit. Like I thought there was going to be something that was like a little bit more, I don't know, not just like, yeah, just shoot him and fucking run. Like, it's like, I would have done that. Like, why did you? It just seems kind of stupid. It's like they gave him a gun. It's like, well, what the fuck did you expect he was going to do? It's just something just seems kind of silly to me about that. Like, does it seem anticlimactic to you, or does it not really just, nah?
I mean, it's pretty realistic. He's there. They're having this almost like ceremony to just show Ra's power. Like, look, this guy's going to kill his own people because ultimately, fear me. And, he turns around. It's almost like they pre-planned it. The guy's got the Zippo lighter. He's signaling like, we've got you covered. So he turns around and he just shoots into, all their little area. And then he starts firing into the air as a distraction, and everybody just takes off running. I mean, given that there weren't more like Anubis and Horus soldiers around, it seems realistic. Right,
I'll take that. I'll take that. I can dig that.
And then we didn't see like any air flight, so it's almost like as if there's just a limited amount of manpower to keep all of these people under control. Really, like it's almost like Ra just doesn't have the army to subdue everyone. So in that sense, like it's kind of, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like you could have done something a little bit more entertaining or neater. But I think you might be walking a line of, because for me personally, I love more realistic scenarios. So I think it can work, but no, I definitely see what you're saying. Like there's probably something a little bit more entertaining that they could have done there, and that may have been budget constraints, but it does stay. It feels like the movie. It doesn't feel like, to me, it doesn't feel like it was a letdown. And that has to do, I think, a lot with just this movie. It moves really fast, which I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think it's kind of neat how much story you can tell with how quick, edits are and a flow. But yeah, I mean, like, all I can say is like there's just a limited amount of guys standing up there. So if that's how it is, what they did there would make sense realistically. Like you could just shoot their, I don't know what their weapon's called, but it's pretty cool. It's just like this rod, and you just explode right in front of Ra and those guys, and then everybody just takes off running, and they shoot into the crowd like once or twice, and they take out like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 people. So it does seem pretty realistic that that's what they would do.
Well, yeah, I just thought it was really weird when they start like, pulling out like AKs and stuff. No, I'm just like, they just roll up like gold plated AKs and shit. No, because it does make sense. Like this was a pre-plotted thing. Like, no, we have guns now, and they don't know that like the Ra is kind of underestimating the people, because A, he doesn't know they have fucking guns, but then B, probably have never really revolted like this before. So like that's got to be a whole new thing for him in terms of just getting totally caught off guard. I mean, they've already killed one of the guards too. Like Kurt Russell blasted one of those motherfuckers. So like you're already down a guy. I guess intergalactic like bodyguards like this. It's not like the putties from Power Rangers. Like this is Anubis. Like these guys are badasses. Like there's probably not a shit ton of them like on supply, but these guys are like, these ancient like warriors. But they get to safety. James Spader is like, yeah, why don't you tell them about the bomb? It's like, oh fuck, and they kind of figure out exactly what he's there for. If I found any hostility, I should blow the thing up. And they're kind of, in disbelief, and rightfully so. I mean, I definitely fucking get it. But just that him bringing it to the surface and making him deal with it. And this next scene too, where he's, he basically gets it out of him. He's like, nobody should outlive their child. That's all you have to say. And James Spader's like, I completely understand. And he's like, yeah, but listen, like, I don't want to die. Like, these men don't want to die. He's like, it's a shame you were in such a hurry to, it's like, yes, that's great. Like, I like that again, because it feels like we're focusing on the Kurt Russell character with this in a weird way. It's like, yeah, this feels like, James Spader is always the one that you remember in this, but it's like, it's definitely Kurt Russell that has this great arc that really kind of brings. It's a little anticlimactic. There's not really a whole lot that happens. I feel like that he needs to have a breakthrough moment with that, like with that kid specifically. I think if there was a breakthrough moment with that kid, that it's like, yeah, you could kind of start to get over, not that you would ever really get over that, but come to terms with exactly everything that happened. But you know what? That's just too fucking much to ask for, apparently. No, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, this was just a great scene between them. I do like this. One of the few times they address each other's personal lives in the whole movie. Then they don't talk about the Stargate. I was like, I think that's interesting. Oh my God, dude, this scene when Anubis gets the Mindfucker 5000 out, that weird ring thing. I was like, dude, I'd shit my pants if he just locked his arm in an infinity gauntlet and brought it out. Like, oh shit. Like fucking Raw is like a part of the MCU. Yeah, it's just kind of showing it's not even really all that necessary. It's just a cool, like, ooh, look what I can do. It's just a kind of a funny, well, not a funny scene, but like just kind of a fun and games kind of like, we show exactly what he's capable of. But again, this right after that, we get the parts with Daniel and Cherie, and it's like, it's such a pain in the ass to be like, again, there's absolutely no subtitles and there's absolutely no idea what's going on. As I was watching this, it made me laugh my ass off because it's like, man, I guess they just really, again, the first time watching it's like, I guess this is just really a movie that makes you think, like it just really challenges you, to fucking want to figure this shit out. I mean, it's working, man. I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on, but I was like, okay, never mind. That's not really what's happening. Like I said, Raw kills that guy, for failing to get him. I like this kind of moment between Daniel. He's getting his own water, and the boys laugh at him, saying that's woman's work. The husbands don't do this work, and Daniel's like, wait, a husband? Like, what the fuck? But he kind of talks to Cherie, and they kind of have this moment, I said that you were my husband, but I told them, I didn't tell them that you didn't want me. And they finally fucking plants one, on her, which is nice. I do enjoy that. And dude, what creeps me out though, and what makes me laugh so hard is when they're closing the curtain and that guy is back there. He's like, oh, like it made me laugh. Like when you look him close the curtain, he's just like, oh, like right. He's just like right there. And like, just if that scene were 2 seconds longer, it would just be his nose pressing into the cloth. Like, but the interesting thing is seeing and I honestly, are these two, like the boy and the girl, are they brother and sister? It feels like they definitely know each other,
right.
And it kind of almost feels like they're brother and sister. Like that's my narrative. I'm like, fuck it. Because I think that's why, the main guy, the guy from the Mummy offers her up is because that's his daughter. And then I think later on when he's like, no, like you have to, right before they unmask, that this is a man and not a god, he's kind of like, you're going to bring, my son, you're going to bring something down on this house. I can't remember what the line is. So I think they're actually brother and sister, which have fucking helped me out a lot. Cause I feel so stupid saying that it's like Cherie and it's Coheed and Cambria, it's like, I don't fucking, I can't say these goddamn names. But this is again, the aha moment, he finds the seventh symbol. We're going home. And it's like, James Spader looks so goofy there, man.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing. Like, so Alexis Cruz's character, is just drawing the seventh symbol, I guess, which is okay. Like maybe I missed something. So I'll definitely be open to that. But it's like, how did he all of a sudden know what the seventh symbol was? Right. Like, is this, especially, what did I miss?
Yeah, when there's no writing and there's no reading, it's like, I mean, I guess, has there just been like this Rebel Alliance, Luke Skywalker, like we're the rebels because we read and write, is there's some kind of weird like thing that I missed out on? It just seems, it's very convenient. It's very ex machina. It's very, right when you're going up for your execution, the governor calls, and gives you a stay, and you get to, your things off. Like it's very convenient. I honestly, like, even if he had gone outside and just stared up and there's the 3 moons and there's the building, he's like, wait a minute, and like, even kind of like that, but just to have it literally drawn out for you is like, that's a little bit much. Like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Same. I definitely feel like there could have been, like, you've gotten me this far, and it's just like, I really think that they just wanted to wrap it up and then get to, the nuke scene. Like, how can we just move the story forward? And they just felt like, this works, which is a little disappointing. Like, you could have done something more to get that 7th symbol. Like, cause you have to have that to get home to move the story forward. And
right.
What else could you have done? I don't know, but, that is something that's a little bit like,
Right. And it's me like, in the movie I would write, and it's like, I've never fucking written a movie in my life, so what do I know? But they ambush him again the next day. They kill Horus. Kosif is the one who's like, yeah, you will bring disaster to us all, son. So I guess they are brother and sister. Father, we will not live as slaves. Daniel shows that he's not. That take a look at your gods. Take a good look. I love that, and just seeing. I mean, just imagine believing that your whole life and seeing that turned upside down and being like, oh my God, like, it's amazing this guy doesn't just blow his brains out, like, just imagine, like, living living somewhere where you actually interacted with God, and someone just, like, basically they Scooby-Doo this motherfucker. They're like, oh, it was really Groundskeeper Johnson. And they pull the mask off, and it's like, lucky this guy doesn't have an existential, like, break. It's like, lucky this guy didn't show up and just fucking kill everybody. One thing I do like is moving after that scene is when the caravan is approaching, and they're gonna get the drop on them, is the costume design. Dude, that final costume is like, holy shit. That is a really interesting, look, where it feels like something like almost like with an Asian influence, but at the same time kind of like European with like the horns. And like, there's something really, really interesting about the way that they have that final costume. And I actually really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite costumes in the whole movie. And that's one thing, again, you can't really knock this movie for, is it's really got a lot of style going for it. And there's definitely a vision of what the future, this kind of thing would look like, across the world.
Yeah, I like that. I like style, vision, definitely good word choices for this movie. And along with the film score, I think all those things combined really, really make this movie, such a big movie. And also, like, when these ships come out here towards the end, if you look at their little the tips of their guns, there's a very Independence alien ship design on them that is reminiscent of the ships in Independence Day. I think.
Oh, dude, yeah. This definitely feels like a spiritual cousin to Independence Day. Like, it absolutely does. Just a small group of people fighting off a more superior race. People. Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. Like a spiritual cousin to Independence Day.
Well, this is the same guy who directed Universal Soldier too, with Jacques Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren. I loved that movie as a kid. It's not great, but I loved that movie as a kid. So it makes sense that, like, it's like, yeah, man, there's something familiar about Stargate, but I just don't love it. It's like, of course, it's Universal Soldier. I fucking watched that movie all the time when I was a kid. But I like this. They basically just ambush him twice, and they're like, yeah, fuck him up twice. Like, it worked the first time. I guess he's not, this is like the 3rd time they have ambushed these people in 24 hours. And it's like, dude, like, get a fucking grip, man. Like, you've got to understand, like, these people are taking advantage of you. Like, you're totally underestimating them. And I think that really shows with, like, all of this shit happens. They get attacked. They kill the guards. We lose one of the locals. But also, like, the whole time Ross just upstairs, like, playing a game. Like, he has no interest in actually getting up and doing it. He could probably go outside and just, annihilate half these people. But he's like, no, I'll just let my people do it. But it has that very kind of similar feel to Independence Day of just these people sending a bomb. It's like they take something and send it right back to, like, the mothership. Like, and that's kind of interesting to me. There's a lot of parallels, and not even that, just also, it's also got, a lot of parallels between that and like Universal Soldier and shit, especially in Kurt Russell. That's what really makes me think like Universal Soldier. It's a very 90s kind of, a kind of look for like what people in the 90s thought like military, is like the old 90s Hummers. You remember like the original Hummers? Like, oh my God, man.
My orthodontist drove one.
Oh no shit, really?
Yeah.
Who was it? I think it was it Schwarzenegger that got the first one when they rolled him out? And I think they actually gave him the very first one.
Yeah, I think it was Schwarzenegger.
So I think I read that in his autobiography. But the thing I hate is when Kurt Russell shoots that guy, he goes, "Hey, how you doing, huh?" And he winks. And I was like, that's the best line. Like, that's the best line you can come up with. And I was like, I don't know. It just seemed kind of stupid. Like if he just said something like beef, it's what's for dinner. And he just fucking like annihilated him. Like, give me something, soup is good food. And give me something there. Give me some kind of line.
Yeah, that could have been such a memorable moment. Maybe like a popular one-liner they could have created. That was a good opportunity for it. It's just like, really? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's kind of lame. But Ross tells him, send the bomb to Earth now, Anubis. I will send it myself. Basically, they get down to finding the bomb in front of the Stargate. He puts his weapon aside and starts putting it together. Daniel and Shari, I'm just going to say Shari. Shari enter. She still carries the pistol. Daniel's, he's got his gun, carries a staff weapon. I thought we were going to dismantle it on the gate on the other side. And you will. That's your job now. I'm going to stay here and make sure this thing goes off. You've got 7 minutes. What an unnecessary fucking thing to do. And it's literally just there to basically put a clock on this thing. And now the stakes are up tenfold. And it's like, it is so fucking unnecessary. If he had put that thing together and then been like, I can't turn this thing off. Like, I can't do it. Something's wrong. Like one of them, you could have it to where that guard shoots, Shari, and it kills her, and part of the clips the bomb and knocks it over, and it can't be turned off now. Something's wrong. Yeah. Like you could have kind of like a 2-for-1 thing where it's like you have something interesting there that kills 2 birds with 1 stone, literally. Mm-hmm. But there's really not anything there where it's like, oh, I just turn it on just to turn it on. It's like, that is so fucking dumb, man. Like, it's just, and the thing that really chaps my ass about it is he's like, I'm going to stay here with the bomb. And you guys are going to go. The bomb has a fucking timer. You can leave. You can set the bomb and then go through the Stargate and have 7 minutes to spare. You know what I mean? Like, why does he have to be there? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. If the bomb has a timer, you set it and forget it and you leave. I was like, so why do you stay behind? Like, why have a bomb with a timer if you have to be there when it goes off? You know when it's going to go off. Like, I don't understand that. That was just really fucking stupid to me. Like, there's really no, like, if he just said, no, I'm staying behind just because I'm staying behind, but like, no, I have to. It's like, nah, I think that's kind of dumb. I was like, if it feels very like Armageddon, like Bruce Willis's character from Armageddon does that. Yeah. Spoilers alert for the end of Armageddon. But it just seems so stupid and unnecessary. And it's like, I don't buy that. That just doesn't make any sense. Like, you set a timer for a bomb that you're going to have to be there for anyways. It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't, if he is like, hey, I have to click this thing in here. I have to be the one to drop this. It's like a match. You've got to be the one to strike the match. That makes sense to me. But just like setting a, be like, oh, and I've got to be here to make sure, I pull this thing out of the oven. It's like, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, where they go with it is like, because he arms it, apparently they rigged it at that point. So like basically Anubis and Horus or Ra, rigged the bomb to where once it was turned on, you couldn't turn it off, right? Right. So it's just like, really? But yeah. I do like your idea of like, the 2 birds with 1 stone, like something fell or something, the rock hit it. And then you could just say, look, we can't turn it off. It's broke. You know what I mean?
Right. That could be cool. Break the fucking trigger off of it or something. I have no idea, but something. It just seems kind of strange because, like I said, she gets shot. She gets injured. He ends up running into the Stargate, and like just I do like his delivery of like, wait for me, and he's just so desperate. He just feels so like, wait, and he, just against like all logic. It's like, no, please, like don't leave me. Like, don't leave me here yet. I thought that was really interesting. And seeing just Kurt Russell be like, where the fuck are you going, dude? Like, that's crazy. The look on his face for like, what the fuck is going on is really interesting. But it's also, I guess this is here again just to ratchet up the intensity, but also like, yes, I know she's been shot and she's dead. She's not going to get deader. She's already dead. Like, you don't have to do this right now. There's a couple of other things I would do here first. Like, I don't know, I'd kill Ra, I'd probably deal with something, but like right now it's like, well, she's not going to be more dead in 2 hours, like, or 7 minutes or however long you've got. But it kind of cracked me up that it's like, I've got to go do this right now. It's like, well, technically she's already dead. But I love the image of him being like beamed up. Like, damn, that looks fucking cool. Because right after it, there's Anubis and they go to, blows at it. But the interesting thing again is like Ra just watching all of this. Like, he literally watches him at one point walk across with her body and just doesn't do anything. And I'm like, for somebody who doesn't want to get destroyed, you kind of aren't really, like I said, Ra could come out of here and just annihilate some of these people, but he just really kind of chills. I'm like, I don't know. That just strikes me as so strange. I don't know. Maybe it's just an overconfidence. Maybe that's just his kind of fatal flaw. But dude, the scene of his friend getting killed is actually kind of like, whoa, like that, the helmet flying out of the explosion and that's all that's there. It's like, ouch.
Oh yeah, it's really pitiful.
It's kind of ominous, It's like, fuck, that's not a good image ever. Oh man. I'm gonna drink.
And he's like, he's really just trying his hardest to get over to them. And he's, you can tell like, he's just like all heart and like, he just boom gets taken out.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I'll be 100% honest. I laughed the whole time, and I just thought it was so just like it's so. Just the look on his face was so unintentionally funny. And the thing is, I'm not like I laugh at very inappropriate times. Very inappropriate times. I am definitely a laugh at a funeral like kind of person, and I just can't really help it. It's like. I remember I've been in ERs for family members who were dying, and it's like, hey, do you think that they can get that $5 back to me? And it's like, there's just that humor that I have to have. It's just my survival things. Like when I saw that, I was just like, like it just fucking made me laugh my ass off. But the ground forces, they surrender to the two flying guards again. There again, it's a Deus Ex kind of like sabotage, where it's like, oh, then all of the townspeople come, and now they're gonna fight everybody off and kill them, and it's like it just feels kind of like that's convenient, Thank God for that. Like I said, they heal her up, or sorry, yeah, James Spader heals her up. They're surrendering. We still got the fight with with Kurt Russell and Anubis downstairs. But I do, there are some cheesy parts of this, but holding his head down and letting the thing chop his head off is like, that's fucking brutal. I was like, I like that. That's really cool.
Oh yeah. I love how this movie ends. It's so cool how like that portal comes down, decapitates Anubis, and then we're left with, oh my God, like how can we defuse this bomb? We can't, what are we going to do? And it's just like the last big kicker of the movie. You beam it up to Ra, he's out. He's like the people have kind of got, I guess it was maybe Horus or a couple other of those bad guys, they're swinging their pole arm or whatever, and they just get overwhelmed by the not the townspeople, but so Ra just makes a getaway, and it's like, how are they gonna defuse this bomb? Oh yeah, you can beam it up to his ship like Star Trek, and it's just like game over, bro. I love that scene.
I love like that guy. God, I'm not gonna keep saying his name like that. The bald guy who's kind of the dad, Kasuf, the Eric Avari.
Mm-hmm.
There's when he's running down the sand with that staff in his hand. It's like, that was it's such a small moment, but it was so believable of just seeing this man who was like, that guy has a crazy character arc for a minor character. He's a believer and devout and like won't read, won't write. And at the end, he's like, fuck these motherfuckers. Open this pit up, motherfucker. Like he's got this brutal, kind of energy running into it that I really loved, of just seeing a man reborn out of fear. And I was like, I love just casting aside, just jumping in and being like, no, I'm going to I'm gonna fuck this shit up. Like, I'm not gonna be taken advantage of again like that. I love it. And like you said, they can't disarm it. They decide to send the bomb back. There is something. I mean, it's goofy, whenever it shows his face and it's like that alien head in there. I was like, dude, this feels like an X-Files episode.
Total X-Files.
Yeah. But basically, we're really winded down here. They've saved the day. Ra gets blown up. They end up, taking the Stargate back. Now, this is something that's interesting to me. And, if there's anything here at the end, because we can just kind of take this, all in one chunky bite. It's O'Neill who goes back, and it's James Spader who stays behind. I really think that it should be the other way around. Like James Spader, I know that he's got this love interest and stuff, but what about taking her to Earth and O'Neill staying behind and being like, yeah, I have a son here. He's like, yeah, and I have a wife. It's like, I have something. Like, if they had done something where it was like James Spader was getting a divorce at the beginning of this movie, and all this shit was happening with obviously what's been going on with O'Neill, and they kind of just found someone for each other in this. But James Spader, it is kind of, there's something interesting about which one would stay behind and which one would go home. And I think it's really O'Neill that kind of is the one that needs to be to stay, of like, I've got to get away from everything that happened here. Like, I want kind of a clean break from everything. And I want to, recover from this tragedy here, in this thing that has just utterly, defined my life now, that I was one of the first people to do this. I don't know. I think it can kind of go either way, but, that's fucking Stargate, dude. I had a lot of fun. I think
me too.
This is a lot of fun. Any kind of movies like this, I'm pretty much always down to do. Like, Danny and I have a little niche of, like, we love doing commentary ones, and I think stuff like this, stuff like Contact, stuff like Stargate, Universal Soldier and Independence Day are ones we could definitely look. Just Roland Emmerich 90 sci-fi, I guess, is our thing.
Yeah, definitely sci-fi for sure.
Yeah. Why don't you hit us with your final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up and get out of here.
All right. Let's see here. I guess my final thoughts are, overall, I love this movie. It just has a lot of, nostalgia and I guess just memories. So, I have a little bit of a bias by, I would give it, a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if, like, objectively it would actually deserve that. But yeah, I think it was cast. I love the casting. I love the film score. I love the themes of, like, the ancient Egyptian culture, the sort of spirituality elements, the academic elements, and it's like, like the spiritual cousin to Independence Day. And overall, I would definitely recommend this movie if you're a sci-fi lover. It's a must see. If you're into sci-fi films, definitely Stargate is a must see film.
Hell yeah. I think that's a fair assessment. It's like, it's not a perfect movie but there is not another movie I can really think of like Stargate. There's not really, there's a couple of them that are similar. They're maybe comparable, but there's not something that, I would say something like Arrival or Contact would probably be the closest thing, to something like this. And they all feel like they have a very, not even similar themes, but just similar, Contact and this are totally different movies. Like, when it comes down to what that movie is trying to say, I don't even know if I can really say 100% what this movie, if it's trying to say anything at all. Not every movie's like that. Not every movie has that kind of what did you learn thing. This could also just be a fun, it's something where you just turn your brain off and it's a fun romp through the deserts of space, and that's fine. Those movies I learned a long time ago, because I remember being at work and somebody mentioning some band like Nickelback or something. I'm like, man, that band sucks. And they're like, well, why don't you like them? And I was like, that just, it has like no artistic kind of, it doesn't mean anything. It's all just this kind of like party rock. And he's like, well, sometimes not everything that's made, movies and music is like that. He's like, sometimes you just want something that'll just turn your head off. He's like, I love Blue Dabba Dee Dabba Die, and not for deeper meaning than I like the way the song sounds. It's like, that's an interesting way. I was just a pissant little, like, 20-year-old. I was such a little snobby asshole. And I was like, yeah, you ever seen Reservoir Dogs? but that's kind of what I think of this movie as it falls in. Like it's a bit of a popcorn movie for me. It starts off high concept and it's really intriguing. And it's low action, high concept kind of thing that kind of gets a little bit more, where it's high concept and low action. I feel like that levels out a little bit more towards the end, where the concept kind of takes a bit of a back burner and we get a little bit more action, which is, it would suck if it were action the whole time. It would suck if it were just talky the whole time. So I think it starts off as a little bit more talkative, and then you really get into the meat of it, the action beats as it goes on. And I do think it does a pretty good balancing act of that. I could use a little bit more of like the setup and stuff, just a little bit more. It is, 2 hours long, so I could use just a pinch more. But just a dabble, do ya more. No, I'm just kidding. But guys, we really hope you enjoyed this episode. I know we've had a lot of fun doing this. Again, you can always check us out on our socials, which you heard at the top. Really, you can find everything at midnightdoublefeature.com. That's where you can find, like I said, all of our merch and written reviews and stuff like that. Please, and I only say this twice because it means so much, please stop by and rate and review us on iTunes. It helps the show immensely. It really, really does so much more than people think. If everybody listening to this that enjoyed the show wrote a review, holy shit, like that would be absolutely fantastic. And I challenge you to do so, and it would make my day. But guys, beyond that, I've had a lot of fun. Matt, thanks again for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. I'm definitely down to do this again.
Oh, for sure. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it so much.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, guys, that's been Stargate. I've been Colin. That's been Matt. We hope you have a good night, and we hope you enjoy the episode. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.